Oh, we're
Did
live,
you see that?
I think. Yeah,
Okay, so we're live.
cool. um, wow. Well, this is exciting. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first live stream. This is 11 hours apart, a ChiLynn podcast. Um, his name is Chi, and my name is Leah. We started this podcast over a year ago, but we haven't been the most consistent of actually publishing our recorded episodes out there. So we thought we'd start trying something new just to be more consistent of getting our conversations out there, and maybe reintroduce ourselves because this might be a new format for us. And we have a great, hopefully, it's going to be a great show today talking about the first 3 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi show, as well as the first 4 episodes of the new season of Stranger Things, and maybe, some other recent updates in the movie, television, and entertainment world. That's mostly what our podcast has been about so far, has been Chi and I talking about movies and shows and other types of art and entertainment that are interesting to us and that we're fans of. We really enjoy having these conversations, but like I said, we're sitting on a bunch of recorded episodes that we haven't done the best job of editing and actually publishing on our YouTube channel. So we thought we would try this, and it's a bit nerve-wracking just because, doing the live stream, it's like not going to be the most polished. So bear with us as we try this out the first time. It might be a little bit choppy, but so far so good. So we're excited. Um, I'll reintroduce myself briefly, and then you can do the same before we get into the conversation. But my name is Leah, and I currently live in Southwest Virginia. Last year, when we started this podcast, I was living in West Virginia, but I grew up here in Virginia, and I'm back in the general vicinity of my hometown and about to start a new job as a nursing assistant, actually, at a hospital close by. So I'm excited about that. But I said it in our very first episode, but my background has primarily been in biology and environmental science. And yeah, so I have this scientific academic background, but I also love watching movies and TV shows and enjoying different types of art and artistry and creativity. And yeah, so I have a passion for these things that she and I get to use this podcast as an outlet for discussing. Um, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, huge Harry Potter fan, and Lord of the Rings fan. So, you know, the new Star Wars shows that are coming out are very exciting for me to discuss. And yeah, I guess that about sums me up, I guess, for this brief reintroduction. I don't know if I forgot anything important, but Chi, why don't you give us a brief reintroduction to yourself?
Sure. My name is Chi. I'm born and raised in this country called Taiwan. If you don't know where it is off the first picture China. I think most people would know where China is, but
Mm-hmm.
imagine there's an island off the southeast coast of China. That's where Taiwan is. It's a small island with a lot of people. So I had lived here until I was in my late 20s, and then I went to the States to get my PhD. I'm also in the field of like ecology, biology. So I'm a scientist by training, and that's actually where Lee and I met because we used to be coworkers.
Yep.
And then we discovered we share this the passion of like movies and TV shows, books, that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, so like like Leah was saying, 1 year over a year ago, we started doing this podcast, even though because I think we were both like really busy, so we haven't been like consistently pushing out sort of contents, but this is our like new attempt to sort of regularly creating contents out there, and hopefully it's going to grow into something significant one day. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I right now I'm back in Taiwan, not my hometown, but it doesn't really make that much difference because it's so small. um, so for now, I'm working as a university faculty. Um, yeah, and but still, I managed to, because it's important for me to still, like I love movies. That hasn't work hasn't really sort of made me not unable to do that. So I still like watch a lot of movies or TV shows. I love video games. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that those are things we're going to talk about in the future. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's me.
Yeah, and I think occasionally, like we definitely, our conversations might venture into some mentions of, cultural issues, philosophical issues, scientific theories, like all sorts of different things, maybe even some political discussion. I don't think we get too heavy into that stuff, but sometimes when we're discussing certain movies or shows, we relate it to stuff that is going on in the modern world, and how different pieces of storytelling can bring insight and uh, inspiration into our everyday lives. So I think we equally enjoy, as much as we enjoy talking about like things that we're fans of and movies and TV and things like that, we also really like, I think, discussing just like current world issues and I don't know, different philosophic things, even different religious things, I guess, different religious philosophies or theologies at times. Like sometimes our conversations will venture into that spiritual realm as well a little bit. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of fun. Like if you are at all interested in, following along with us, we'd love to have you as a listener, as an audience member. But we did post our very first ever podcast episode that we recorded over a year ago, and in that episode is a much more in-depth introduction to me and Chi and what this podcast is kind of about, and then also our favorite movies and books and things like that we talk about in that episode. So feel free to go back and listen to that. It's posted on our YouTube channel. It was multiple parts because it was so long. So you certainly, don't have to listen to all of it. But if you are at all interested in Chi and I going into more depth about ourselves and our backgrounds and what brought us or inspired us to do this podcast, like feel free to give that a listen. Yeah, but I think this is a new uh, effort for us to be more consistent about putting content out there and hopefully growing an audience. So please do engage with us. Feel free to comment, like, subscribe, send us messages, give us feedback. Hopefully it's nothing too negative, but we'll receive. We'd love to receive feedback because we do want to try to grow this into something that is more of a consistent thing in our lives, and that we can be accountable to our audience a little bit more and hopefully build a bit of a community here and engage with you all who might be fans of some of the same stuff that me and Chi are fans of. And yeah, so it's an interesting time when it comes to movies, television, and entertainment, since a lot has changed, especially the pandemic, brought about a lot of change as far as movie theaters being closed down, and now things being, at least in the US, are like pretty opened back up. So it's going to be, and then obviously streaming services like took off, and have exploded. And so it's going to be really interesting to continue this podcast through over the next, hopefully, couple years at least, and see, where things go. But we like to try, Chi and I like to try to get to the theater, especially for movies that were made for that cinematic experience, as much as we can. So we're proponents of that, I would say, or at least I feel like I am. And but we also love some of the stuff that's coming out on streaming services. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Primarily the first 3 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I have seen the whole part of season 4 that has been released on Netflix for Stranger Things, but Chi has only seen the first 4 episodes of Stranger Things season 4. So we might talk about that as well. And another thing that is very much on our radar that I'm just going to mention before we get into Kenobi discussion is the new Top Gun movie, which Chi has seen and said is really good, right, Chi?
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it very much.
Yeah. And I am going to see that tomorrow. So I haven't seen it yet, but I cannot wait. I rewatched the first one in preparation, and I'm so pumped. But I actually had COVID like 2 weeks ago, so I kind of got thrown off because of that. I couldn't go into public for a little while. So now that I'm cleared and COVID free, I'm so excited to get to the theaters to see that. So yes, that is on our radar. And obviously continuing to watch Kenobi and Stranger Things as time goes on. And yeah. Okay, so to get us started, though, let's start with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. First 3 episodes have come out, and I've watched all 3 of them, and I know you have too, Chi. So
I have.
we actually talked privately about this show already after the first 2 episodes came out, but let's rehash some of that here so that we can kind of go through all 3 episodes. So Chi, why don't you start us off by telling us what you've thought so far overall of all 3 episodes, and then if there's anything in particular you want to point out right away from any individual episode, let us know. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I was kind of nervous about it before it came out because the hype is so real, and the anticipation from everybody is just so intense, and I really want it to be good because I know I'm going to be really disappointed if it's not up to par. But thank God it was good. I really enjoyed all the episodes so far. I thought it was really strong, and I was glad to see that he has a lot of heart in it. From Kenobi's part, because I like how they started the show because he is well he had to live with this immense guilt that he just failed Anakin Skywalker, and had to had to kill him basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just tell the weight on his chest over this past 10 years where we had not seen him. And I think it's a great place to start a character because we all know that he's gonna um you know he's gonna go on this really positive arc in the intervening years between episode 3 and 4, but we don't know how he got there. And I think there's just so much story to tell, to fill in the blanks. And I'm really pleased to see at least they handle the emotional part really well. And of course, Ewan McGregor, well, he's a fantastic actor, no doubt about that. No, we all know that already. And he's done such a fantastic job portraying this tired, depressed, guilty man, and that is trying to forget it all, and was brought back into action again. So I really enjoyed that part. Um, I also enjoyed the young actress that played young Leia. I
Hmm.
know that that's not a consensus. I think I've heard people actually not liking her as a character or as her performance. I had no problem with that. I thought she was really charming. Like um, obviously the character was like a really precocious child, right? She
Hmm.
was like you know
Yeah.
uh, like really mature in a very
Hmm.
cute way for her age. I thought that was that the writing was really good. I wasn't annoyed by her performance or or by the character itself. I like her. I like every scene she was in. I thought the actress did a really good job. Um, so yeah, so those are the things I really like about the show so far. And we just saw Vader for the first time.
Hmm.
Like really okay, so I okay, sorry, just let me go back for a second. I
It's a
love
lot to a lot of ground to cover.
yeah, I love the cliffhanger, not the cliffhanger, but I love the ending scene of the episode 2. Oh, by that I mean the episode 2 of the
Episode
show,
two.
not like
Yeah,
the whole, um
gotcha.
because that was the moment when Obi-Wan first learned that Anakin was alive, and he was like so well. So first of all, that was a powerful performance by Ewan McGregor. Like the
Mm,
shock on his face and the
great. Hmm.
realization of that, and
Hmm.
I love how they just cut from his face to Vader opening his eyes in this recovery tank thing.
Hmm.
I thought it was a really, really great, powerful imagery, and
Mm,
that was we had to live with that moment for a week before we got this third episode, and
hmm.
that was when we really saw Vader like moving around as a character in episode 3, and honestly, I was so surprised because I didn't expect Obi-Wan and Vader to meet, like really, really meet and interact that soon. I thought we are gonna wait until like
No.
maybe the last couple episodes for that to happen. Uh, so I was actually kind of I was taken by surprise when I first watched episode 3, and then I watched it again yesterday, and I liked it very much. Actually. Yeah, I thought it was a very powerful moment, when when the student has become the master sort of thing, like the power, used to be, Obi-Wan was the more powerful one, but now it's like reversed because he's gotten so rusty because he hasn't used the Force for 10 years. And Vader was just a powerful like Sith Lord. So we saw like how this like a power dynamic flipped, and just how like like Vader, just how he's like a full on evil character now, like and
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm curious to see how, because at the end of episode 3, uh well, I don't think this is a spoiler because it's only episode 3, so
Oh
you
yeah.
wouldn't the money.
We
No, I
didn't.
think
We
anybody
didn't
expecting
say.
like a huge conclusion there. But they interacted, and then sort of Obi-Wan just got away, and then I'm curious to see how they're gonna go from there. Like how because again, we were left on this cliffhanger of like, okay, so how is Vader gonna pursue Obi-Wan, or is this it for now? Um, yeah, so I'm very curious to see how they're gonna take this, how the show is gonna go from this point on. Um, yeah, but overall, I mean, those are my general thoughts. I like I said, I've really enjoyed it so far. Um, yeah, very excited about where the show's going to go from this point on. Yeah,
Yeah.
how about you?
Um. Yeah. I like it a lot so far, to be perfectly honest. But I will throw out there before I get into this. We forgot, or I forgot to say anything earlier about, obviously there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this, in pretty much all of our discussions for whatever movie or show we're talking about. Like we here at a ChiLynn podcast do not worry about spoilers. So we'll probably put something in the description of this episode, to say spoilers ahead, but like we're not going to announce that every time because it just gets annoying after a while. So we assume like when I say that we're going to discuss episodes 1 through 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, like there's going to be spoilers in it. There's going to be spoilers for episodes 1 through 4 of Stranger Things if we get around to talking about that later. So just for future reference of any of our listeners, spoilers galore on this channel. But yes, I was so excited for this show. Like I cannot even describe, because it is really hard for me to decide who my favorite Star Wars character is. Like, I feel like I have like 5 or 6 different favorite Star Wars characters. But usually I would think that number one favorite, I usually would probably say R2, because that way I don't have to choose between any of the human characters. And R2 is like just awesome in every way and is like the most iconic Star Wars thing ever. So I love R2, but my second favorite character, it's still really hard for me to say, but Anakin might be my second favorite character. And the fact that like Vader is in this, that this is coming out of like the people who created this show is coming out of like some love for the prequels, like that means a lot to me as a fan who grew up as part of the prequel generation and who always loved the prequels and never understood like why they got criticized so hard, because I really was like a child during when all the prequels came out. So like to me they were great. And so I just love that there's so much love for the prequels now among my generation of fans that like grew up and now have become adults that have, money to pay for things and stuff. That there is a show that has partially come out of that, but that also links so closely to the original trilogy. Like that is just this is such a special place to be telling a Star Wars story, and these are extremely special characters, like the most iconic, valuable characters in all of Star Wars, like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. Like they are 2 of the most consistent characters throughout the original trilogy and then the prequels. And I mean, well, Darth Vader, I do view him as separate from Anakin Skywalker. So I guess that's like, but we have Hayden Christensen playing him. So that like links it to Anakin for me on like a whole other level. But anyways, I love that they were ambitious enough to take this on and do this. Although like Chi, I was a little bit nervous about it because it obviously is dealing with very precious characters that in very precious parts of the timeline that you don't want them to mess up or create like plot holes or undermine in any way anything that occurred in the prequels or in the original trilogy. And so, having said all that, I am withholding some of my judgment until I see the rest of this show. Although I just heard like today or yesterday that I don't know if it's like confirmed yet, but there's definitely discussion that there might be a season 2 of Kenobi or some sort of continuation, even though they said that this is a limited series. So there might be more beyond even this series. But
Can
I'm
I
kind of
quickly
with.
add some? Can I quickly add
Yeah,
something?
go.
Yeah. So Ewan McGregor was asked about this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what he said was, I'm sure what he said was, everybody's open for season 2, but this season it's a self-contained story. So we're not, they're not leaving us on any cliffhanger or any unresolved issue at all.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, if this is received really well, and sure, right? But for
Mm-hmm.
now, they didn't make this with a season 2 in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think that's what they said. I think we can trust them. And also, one other quick thing is, uh, Deborah Chow, who directed all the episodes and was
Yes.
basically the person in charge of this. She, I've heard her mention this in various interviews, that one of the things that they want to make sure they do is they respect the canon.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is, well, because there's already some things happen already that seemingly break the canon, or in
Mm-hmm.
contradiction with the canon.
Mm-hmm.
I think we shouldn't be too worried about that, just because they seem very aware that we should they don't want to violate any of the, because they know where the show, uh this show is basically like as a connective tissue between episode 3 and 4. So they want to make sure that that's all in line with everything.
Right.
So I think we shouldn't be too, as fans, we shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
too worried about, oh, are they gonna create some contradictions or anything like that. But again, like, yeah, I think there are things that we just have to wait and see until this season
Mm-hmm.
finishes. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, that's what I want to add, and then
Yeah.
please.
Well, that does lead in nicely to like maybe one of the next things I was gonna say, which is that like my main I've really thoroughly enjoyed watching this show so far, and we're halfway through. But so I cannot wait for the next 3 episodes. Like I wish, in some ways, I wish that they did come out all at once, but whatever, it's fine. Um, and but I will say, as of right now, my main concerns are a little bit still in place because there are plot holes in my mind. They are opening up some plot holes currently, but we haven't seen the end yet. So I'm hoping that they're going to close all those potential holes before we actually get to the end of this show, because then I will be able to like judge it more fairly, I guess. Because right now, like some of my main critiques about it do have to do with things that I see or I have interpreted through my viewing of it as just messing a little bit too much with some preconceived inferences about the plot. And I don't know, but anyways, that's like my main concern about it still, though. Like every bit of it that I'm watching, I'm just like, I want to see these characters so bad, but not at the expense of messing up the legacy of the prequels or the original trilogy, and probably especially the original trilogy, since that's obviously like the initial thing that started it all. Like you just hate to see, but there are some things that even George Lucas, he kind of contradicted himself a few times, because as the story was developing, like he came up with new ideas and things. So I understand that, but still, it's like when George Lucas does it to his own story, that's different from when people who weren't the original creator do it, in my mind. And so anyways, but I have really loved it. Chi, when we talked privately about it, I realized like right after we finished that conversation that we had like barely at all talked about Princess Leia. And I thought that was crazy because like it's probably one of the most notable things about this show is the reveal of like young Princess Leia and like how much screen time she's getting. And I agree with you. Like when I was like pretty skeptically watching it when they revealed young Princess Leia, because I'm just like, that's going to be I was thinking to myself when they revealed that she was in the show in episode 1. Like I had heard rumors that she was going to be potentially a part of the show. I just never imagined that she was going to be this big of a part. Like she
Hmm.
right away in the first episode like came onto the scene and just like was right. She was in the, I hope I'm not getting things mixed up, but I think she was in that first, yeah, she was in the first episode
Yeah.
because she gets kidnapped at the end of the first episode, right? Or was that
Yeah.
in the second? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes. No,
Okay.
that's right.
Yeah, she gets kidnapped. And I was just a little nervous about like how they were going to portray her, if it was going to seem authentic or not or whatever. And I have to say like um I think that they did the best possible job. Like, I don't know how you could, that is a really hard thing to pull off, to not only imagine what a character would be like earlier in their life. I think that's difficult to do, to go back in time, but then also to find a child actor that can portray that is like crazy. And my only critique of that character or that character at all is has to do with like the fact, I don't think they should have put her in so many chase scenes. Like I don't know why they did that, because that did come off as like pretty bad. And like the chase scenes with Princess Leia have just been terrible. And I mean, but it's like fine because it's like lighthearted, it's fun, it's Star Wars, like whatever. It's like that doesn't matter that much. But then also I come from a background of, I ran cross country and track in high school and college. And even for a 10-year-old, and I don't like, I honestly think that this actress is doing such an amazing job. But my one critique of her is she has a really bad running form, even for a 10-year-old. Like it's like bothers me on a really deep level. And
She's not
I that's
trained in running.
I know, but it's, you don't have to be, even when I was 10, I guarantee you I did not
you
waddle around
you
the
got
way
that.
that she does. And
Yeah, no,
so
that's true. That's true. I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah. The chase scenes are, they're like really comical, I gotta say. And you
yeah.
compare. So sorry,
And I
just
don't know
I
if
don't
they
mean
were
I don't mean to
supposed to
cut you
be.
off, but
No,
like
go ahead.
when on season on episode 3, when she was being, they got to this anyway, they got to this like mining planet, and basically she was being like, like Obi-Wan was leading her, like held, like hand holding her the whole time. And yeah, like the way she walks is just, it's really it's funny because, like, when she speaks, she's such a like a precocious child. She's like really,
Yes.
like really wise, and but when she like walks right next to Obi-Wan, and she's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you know she is like a child.
Yeah.
And that contrast just, I think it's very endearing. I find it very endearing. It just put a smile on my face whenever I see her being like led by Obi-Wan, just like trying to catch up with the, with his strides and all that. It's very, yeah, I like that. But I
Well,
agree,
to,
I think the running scenes are just, there's no way the chase wouldn't
oh,
end in like five
it's so
seconds.
dumb.
I get it, but yeah,
I don't
it's
know
kind of
that, like,
comical.
I just feel like there could have been a different, they didn't need to put in a chase scene there. Like they could have just had her be kidnapped and they could have saved
I
screen
know.
time. Like I
Yeah.
don't understand why they needed her to like to do that. But like anyways, I it's not really her fault, or I put that
Hmm.
more on, that's like the director, the writers, I don't know, like because they didn't need to include that in my mind, but for some reason they felt like they need. And then there was a time later on in episode 2 when she runs away from Obi-Wan and he can't even grab her, and it's like
I
that is
know.
so
I know.
unbelievable, it's unreal, it's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then she's like running across a rooftop somehow and yet she can barely run. Like I don't, I just I don't know, but she's an interesting actress, cuz to me I don't know how old she actually is in real life, but she looks younger than 10. But then when she speaks, she does such a good job of delivering her lines like as if she's older than her years, like they, and I think that's on purpose for the character of Princess Leia. They wanted Princess Leia to be, you know, sharp and sharp-witted, and then also like showing like some signs of being strong in the Force through her ability to like read people and be like in tune with things on like kind of a whole other level than most other 10-year-olds are at that age. And that's like really cool to see an actress be able to deliver those lines like that. Like in that sense, like they casted this perfectly. And also I have to say her hair is perfect too. Like I don't know if they had to
Mhm.
do anything to her hair, like dye it, but they got the color is perfect. Like it looks like Princess Leia's hair. And some of her, the way her facial structure is, like, to me doesn't look like young Carrie Fisher, but I think the hair like makes up for it because they got the hair so perfect that like then I'm like, yes, that's Princess Leia. Like it's undoubtedly her.
Mhm.
And that's cool. But I actually thought, yeah, I mostly am very pleased with that whole thing of Princess Leia and the actress that they chose to play her. Like I think it was casted perfectly. It was really well written. But interestingly, I watched the first 2 episodes of this show with my dad, and he did not like the young
Hmm.
Princess Leia character. And I didn't really get to ask him why because I just haven't, but like I'm curious if maybe for him she was like a little too precocious, cuz she does venture on that like line between being too precocious and like they need her to be precocious, but once you go too far with it, it becomes annoying to adults,
Mhm.
I think. And I do think they are treading that line, and that is, I honestly was kind of hoping that she might be returned to Alderaan in episode 3. I'm a little on edge that she's now kidnapped again. Well, it's implied at the end of episode 3 that Riva now has
Mhm.
custody of her, and now Obi-Wan's gonna have to go like find her again or something. And I'm a little bit disgruntled about that because I just don't want to see this character like I just wonder if they should have used her a bit more sparingly. Like she's playing a pretty large role in this show, which not only makes me nervous for the character that starting to get annoying to people, but also the plot hole that starts to open up. Like the more time she spends with Obi-Wan, the more I know that they're doing this thing, like I'm pretty sure what they're trying to do is imply that she never actually hears or realizes that his real name is Obi-Wan. She just knows him as Ben, which
Mhm.
actually would make sense for the sequel trilogy, because in the sequel trilogy, which I like to pretend doesn't exist, but unfortunately it does. So in the sequel trilogy, she obviously names her son Ben.
Mhm.
So the fact that young Leia has this special relationship with Ben Kenobi does actually make sense for in the sequel trilogy of her naming her own son after Ben Kenobi. Um, but it opens up the plot hole of in the original trilogy, which I think should take precedence over anything in the sequel trilogy, um, of how when Princess Leia initially contacts Obi-Wan Kenobi, it is very, very clear that she does not know Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think it's very clear, and I'm pretty sure it is to like every other fan that like she clearly says in the recording, like, you fought with my father in the Clone Wars. Why would she say that if she actually knew who he was earlier? Like, she would just say, she wouldn't even say you fought with my father during the Clone Wars. Like she would just say, like, hey, remember me? I'm Princess Leia. um, but so I just think they are doing the thing where they're trying to make it seem like this young Leia doesn't ever hear him being called Obi-Wan, and yet they keep putting the character in close proximity to times when people are calling him Obi-Wan. And it's getting to be a little bit like I'm starting to not believe that she hasn't heard or seen him be referred to as Obi-Wan in any situation yet, because she's obviously a really smart girl. And so when she was in the tunnel in episode 3 with Obi-Wan and the new Game of Thrones lady, the Game of Thrones lady calls Obi-Wan Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan says to her, it's just Ben now. And Princess Leia's like on the other side of the room, but it's like, you're telling me this really smart 10-year-old didn't just overhear that? Like, she's probably listening to every word that they're saying. Like, I understand that for like an average 10-year-old, maybe stuff like that would go over their head, but this is obvious. They've also made the point very clear that she is not your average 10-year-old. She's like more in tune to things than most 10-year-olds. So you can't do both. You can't have this 10-year-old that's more aware than your average 10-year-old and then also expect the audience to believe that she hasn't put 2 and 2 together yet. And then that messes up that continuity with the original trilogy, which I'm starting to get like a little bit like, for right now, if they had had her return to Alderaan in episode 3, that would have been fine. I would have just bought it. I would have said, okay, you know, she doesn't know he's Obi-Wan. She just knows him as Ben. And she's, you know, this is a relatively, it was a crazy thing to happen in her life. But, you know, I could see how she wouldn't put 2 and 2 together later on. But now it seems like at the end of episode 3, now we're going to see her even more in this show. And it's like, I'm a little worried about that. But we will see. That's one of the things I want to withhold judgment on entirely until I've seen the rest of the episodes. And I have thought that so far that she's been great. But I do worry also that she might overstay her welcome a little bit if she continues to be such a focus for the rest of the episodes. Because the other thing that's on my mind about this is, I think if they're going to have young Leia in this, they need to also show young Luke. And yet all we've gotten is a little glimpse of young Luke. And I'm starting to think that maybe that's just about all we're going to get. Although we know that that freaking toy has got to get back into Luke's hands at the end of this show, because he obviously has that in the original trilogy. So I'm thinking we're going to see Luke like maybe one more time in the last episode. And it's also going to be a really short, simple interaction, or really, you know, maybe even distant interaction like the first one was. And, you know, I'm not bothered by that. I would have been perfectly satisfied with that if that's also what we got with Princess Leia. But now we're getting Princess Leia being this huge part of this show and Luke barely being in the show, when it's like, that doesn't make any sense, because Obi-Wan's whole job this whole time is supposed to be watching over Luke. So I'm a little bit disturbed by the fact that this story seems to not have much to do with Luke at all, which is what Obi-Wan is supposed to be doing, but it has a ton to do with Princess Leia. And I'm just like, the imbalance of that is like a little bit bothersome. But I, again, am going to withhold judgment. And then especially if they do continue to tell stories in this time period with Obi-Wan, I'm hoping that in the future, you know, we might get to see more of Luke, a young Luke, if that's something that happens with this. But even with that, I don't want to see too much of young Luke. I just want to see enough, you know, that I feel the same way about both of them. Like, I could also see a young Luke getting, like, if there's too much focus on that or too much screen time with that, it starts to impede a little bit on the older character that we all know. I don't know. It's just like a little dangerous to spend too much time, in my opinion. So that's my like in-depth thoughts on the young Princess Leia and in this show. But so far, I think she's been great. I certainly don't have any like major issues with her at all. I think the sassiness is on par. There
Mm-hmm.
are a few times where I have felt like I can't even put my finger on it exactly, but I have felt like, I don't know if that's doesn't really feel like Princess Leia to me. But like I said earlier, I think it's a really hard thing to do to adapt a character into its younger version. So I think they're doing an excellent job with that. And that is a really ambitious thing to do. So I give them applause for that. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah.
also, we have to sort of understand that how good can an actress be when she was only 10 years old, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. And I really
there are
have
going to be.
none of my critiques really have to do with the acting or the actress. It's all about the writing, the decisions that were made with the storytelling regarding that character. I just want to
Oh,
clarify
okay,
that.
okay,
Like
okay, okay.
I'm not I am not at I think that they casted it perfectly. I mean, I don't know how you could have found a better person other than the running thing. That was my one thing of like, if you
Hmm.
were gonna have a character running, which again, this is more directed towards the writers, but like if you're gonna need this young 10-year-old to be running a lot in this show, maybe choose an actress that can actually look like she's running fast or like look like she has good, like better running form, because she runs like she's 2, but she's not 2, she's 10. And so that's what bothers me about that. But again, that's with the and then my real critique of that is like, why does the running even need to be in there in the amount that it
Hmm.
wasn't? I understand in
Yeah.
episode 2 when she was running through the city, like that makes a little bit more sense to me because it's like she can more easily like slip in between people or in small spaces where like Obi-Wan maybe can't get or Riva can't see or whatever. But like the chase scene in the woods was just absolutely ridiculous and it took me out of it. Like it took me out of the world of Star Wars, and I think that's what people are always going to critique anything related to Star Wars about, is anything that pulls you out of the world. If you start to realize like, oh, I'm watching a show right now, like that's going to be something that people that
Hmm.
fans like pick apart because they're going to be like, well, that doesn't feel right because it doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. And I think there's perfect. I mean, uh Jake Lloyd, I forget how old he was, like 9 years old or something when he was in The Phantom Menace. And did George Lucas have him running around everywhere? Absolutely not, because George Lucas probably realized like that's going to be really boring for people to watch a 9-year-old running, because 9-year-olds can't run that fast. So instead, he puts them in a pod race, and that's much more exciting because now you have a
Hmm.
little kid going like super fast speeds in this vehicle. And that makes, to me, that's more entertainment value right there. But this is a show, not a movie. They didn't have like that pod race. I don't even want to know how much money George Lucas spent on creating that pod race sequence. So they didn't have that kind of budget for this show. So they couldn't have Leia in a little like speeder or anything. They had to have her running, I guess. But I don't think it was necessary. I think they could have written that differently, in my opinion.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
agree.
critique.
I,
So
I
sorry.
agree. Yeah, no, I agree. But I do wonder if the chase scene was meant to be like a comic relief. I wonder if that's
Yeah.
no, but I agree. I'm with you. I think it's just unrealistically like how. Yeah, like I said before, like how can the whole thing not end in like 5 seconds, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no way that like 3 4 grown men cannot catch like a yeah, like a wobbly like 9 year old 10 year old in like 10
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah.
No, but I do think that's yeah, I wonder what is the decision making process behind that.
Yeah.
But even though I think that is just like a
It's a
really
small
minor
thing.
thing, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I do wonder about that too.
Yeah.
um uh but but to the credit of, to go back to the more positive aspect of Leia and the actress, I
Hmm.
think some of my favorite moments of the show so far are actually between her and Obi-Wan. When Obi-Wan was like sort of, I guess the young Leia reminded him a lot about what happened before, and just like this, it's like a poignant nostalgia thing. I thought those moments were great.
I mean, I loved their discussion about the Force when she asked him about the Force in episode 3.
Hmm.
I thought
Yeah,
that was
that was a
awesome
nice moment.
and really cool to listen to Obi-Wan talk about. But plus he like reveals that he might have had a brother, which was like I was like, "What? Was not expecting that." Like, what are you dropping
Yeah,
on us right now, Obi-Wan? Like that seems to be setting when he said that, that's when I was like, "Oh my gosh, are they going to do like a second season of this show?" Cuz now we got to they're obviously setting that up. They wouldn't have had him say that if they weren't planning on telling a story involving Obi-Wan's brother down the line. And
I,
so,
I, I, I don't know actually. I think that scene was meant to like highlight the sacrifice, I guess. It's like, well, yeah,
mhm,
I once had a, like my birth family, but then
mhm,
because I had it, because I was forced sent out, I was talented, so I had to like make a sacrifice to let that go and then join a new family, uh which is,
yeah.
not related by blood. I
Mhm.
really thought the whole point of that scene was that, instead of setting up, oh, are we going to see Obi-Wan's brother? I really don't think, even though, I can rule that out, but as I was watching that, like, twice now, I really don't get the feeling that we're trying to bring in some sort of setting up anything. I think he was like reminiscing about, because like the whole thing was, oh, when I see your face, it reminded me of your mother, that sort of thing. Like when I see you, I saw your mother's face.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I love that moment very much. And like, and when Leia
Well,
asked him
yeah.
like, are you my real father? And I was like, I wish I could say I was, but I'm not. But I think
I
that was
know
the
that was kind of weird actually.
no, but
Because
I
there is a
think
because that's
no,
what
I think it makes sense for her to ask that question, because I think she obviously felt like there's a bond. I think, you know, I think Leia likes Ben. He sort of I think she felt this connection, unexpected connection to this strange, you know, old man. Not that old, but like, and I think it makes sense for her to ask him, like, are you actually my birth father? No, yeah, I didn't think
no,
that
I
was.
didn't think that that was weird. I thought
Oh,
it
okay.
was weird. I thought it was kind of weird when Obi-Wan says, "I wish," or whatever he said, like, "I wish I could say that I was." Um, but that's just funny. I mean, it's just kind of funny
Oh,
because like there are, I have not I don't know that much of like what was in the books or the comics related to Star Wars. I really only know what was in the movies, the TV shows, and also different things that I've learned from watching like YouTube videos on Star Wars lore, but I haven't read books or comics myself very much. So but I know that like obviously Anakin thought that maybe there was something going on between Obi-Wan and Padme. And then also I think that there was like fan speculation as well when the prequels came out about that very same thing, that Obi-Wan like secretly did have feelings for Padme or like stuff like that. So when he says when he which I don't know if there's like actual I think Obi-Wan, my personal opinion is I think Obi-Wan genuinely he is a compassionate, he's like the ideal Jedi. Like he is what a Jedi should be. And I mean, not in this show, he's obviously like kind of fallen off and a little broken and wounded and stuff. But like when in the prequel era, he was such like an ideal version of a Jedi in a sense. Like he has that like true compassion, and he did make real personal sacrifices and stuck to the Jedi ways even when that required massive amounts of personal sacrifice. So I think he genuinely just cared for Padme because she was a friend of his, because he cared about Anakin as a brother, and Padme obviously was important to Anakin, so therefore she's important to Obi-Wan. Like I don't believe that there was any actual like I don't think Obi-Wan
Mhm.
ever overstepped any sort of boundaries there or anything. But but it just was kind of funny when he delivered that line in the show. I was kind of like just like okay.
Oh,
That's a
okay, yeah,
little
yeah. Well, yeah. If you have that theory in mind, then yes, it could be interpreted as well. I wish I had kids with Padme. Yeah, but yeah, but
Oh.
I think I'm with you too. Like from again,
Yeah.
I know even less about. I'm even like less well versed in Star Wars lore than you are, but I just don't get the vibe. I don't think it's true that it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually
yeah.
thought when I watched the Clone Wars show, I this is one of the critiques I have of the Clone Wars show is it focuses so much on like I don't know. I think that the Clone Wars show had this thought of like we've already told the story of the prequels with Anakin and Obi-Wan. So they take more of a backseat in some episodes they are like the star of the show in some episodes, but for most of the show, Obi-Wan and Anakin are more almost like side characters, and like the main characters are the clones in Ahsoka. And so you get to see little parts between Anakin and Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars show, but in my opinion, I would still like to see more between them because I love their relationship. And so I thought in the Clone Wars show, it would have been really cool if they put a few more scenes in there of times when Anakin like maybe like walked in on Padme and Obi-Wan like having a one-on-one conversation, or like if they showed some little like hints of like what led Anakin to believe that in the end of Revenge of the Sith when Anakin says you turned her against me, like why did he jump to that conclusion? Like could there
Mm,
have been some little things that Anakin was picking up on along the way where he started to think like, oh, like something's going on between them, like or Obi-Wan's like maybe he starts to like lose trust in Obi-Wan in some ways, and I kind of wish that they had showed that a little bit more in the Clone Wars show to just give even more weight to what happens in Revenge of the Sith.
mhm,
And then another thing I had wished that they had shown more of in the Clone Wars show was I wish that they had showed us more episodes of Anakin having dreams that then come true. Like, so that there's this whole, because that's true for the character, is that Anakin, his most powerful, like, force ability that he just naturally had was that he could see things before they happen, which again, understanding that about his character gives more weight to what occurs in Revenge of the Sith, because then you realize when he sees Padme's death, it makes sense that he freaks out, that he genuinely believes she is going to die unless he does something about it. Because the only thing we see in the movies is before that he predicts his own mother's death. He sees her death, or he sees what she's going through, and then that does come true. She does die. So you see that. But I think it is true for the character that it is more than just those two instances. Like he sees things all the time that happen before they happen. So he has this long history of basically being able to predict the future. And then he starts having nightmares of his love of his life, the one person that he has that genuinely like loves him in a familial way, other than maybe Obi-Wan. He sees her dying, and like you could see how that would like cause him to then be in this really desperate situation where he genuinely thinks like, if I don't do something, she is going to die. And then, it turns out coming true anyways. But anyways, I just think that they could have set up some of those things more in the Clone Wars. But that's kind of a side point. I forget why I even got on that tangent.
I can't remember either. No, I think we started from this line Obi-Wan says, like,
Obi-Wan and
I wish I could
Padme.
tell you, yeah, I was, but I'm not your father.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I just don't think that's, like I said, it doesn't make sense. It didn't mean it that way. Totally didn't
I
mean it that way.
think that I did love though how Obi-Wan was like looking at Leia in the show and being reminded of Padme. Like it does remind us as an audience of like how much Obi-Wan, I mean, he did care for Padme, and he does care for Anakin too. And he's demonstrating that through all of his actions in this show. Like he did do what he promised to do. He's watching over Luke at Tatooine, although he breaks that by leaving Luke unguarded on Tatooine, which is another thing I have a problem with the show. But besides the point, he had to go save Leia. She's also important, so he had to do it. But he's now like looking after Leia, and that is Obi-Wan through his actions, like demonstrating his love for Anakin and Padme, and risking his life to protect these children and risking the lives of the other child in a sense. Like he's risking Luke's life too a little bit by leaving and going to save Leia because her life was in danger. But I don't know. I just think that I did love like those references that he makes to like being reminded of. I assumed it was Padme. I've heard some people talking about they think he's
Satine?
referring to Satine, but I
No,
just don't think
it's Padme.
it's
Like, yeah,
obviously Padme, right?
there was, yeah, I read something. Well, not for this, because this one is obviously Padme, right? Like when I see your
Oh
as
yeah.
your mother or something, that cannot be Satine. But when when in the first episode or second one, when he said,
Second.
well, yeah, like she was a leader, like but she like died a long time ago. Yeah, there are people actually thought he was referring to Satine. No, no.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
I agree. I never thought that for a second. It was like, why would he be comparing
No,
Princess Leia to Satine?
it's well, it's, you can interpret it that way, but just based on the context, it has to be Padme. It just has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree. I agree with that,
Yeah.
actually.
One
That's all I'll
question
say
though.
about
One
it.
question.
Yeah.
Based on what we know about Uncle Owen,
Oh yeah.
are we expected, because there's one thing left, which I don't know if it's supposed to be resolved within this show, is Uncle Owen is still against Luke being trained by Obi-Wan, or even becoming a Jedi, right? He was against the idea. He still is even now.
Mm-hmm.
Was that his attitude at the time of his death? Like I forgot already what he, when we met him in episode 4, what was his attitude? I
Yeah,
forgot.
it's the same pretty much, because
Oh, okay.
he is against he wants Luke to stay. Luke actually at the beginning of episode 4 wants to go and join the Empire to fight for the Empire in against the rebels, because he just sees that as a way. He wants to go off and become a pilot, I think is what I don't know if he says pilot, but he wants to join like the Imperial Army, and because he sees that as his way off of Tatooine, and he just wants to be off the planet. He wants to be a part of the action. He wants to, just go out there and like explore. And like his friend had left earlier than him. He had a friend on Tatooine that left earlier to join the Imperial Army, and Luke wanted to kind of follow in his friend's footsteps, but his Uncle Owen, wants him to stay and work on the farm for longer. Like they wanted to basically, Uncle Owen wants to keep Luke on Tatooine. And he also views in episode 4, Uncle Owen views Obi-Wan as like, he dismisses Obi-Wan as, or Ben Kenobi as crazy and like stuff like that. Like he doesn't, I think he has a line about, Luke says something about like, I want to go, I forget what Luke says, but I think that there's some exchange between Luke and Owen regarding Ben Kenobi, and Uncle Owen says something like really negative about Obi-Wan Kenobi too.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're not expecting to. Okay. So all right.
No,
So
Uncle Owen is
one of the things
not
that
about
get
it.
resolved.
Yeah,
Okay.
or maybe it was.
Gotcha.
I don't remember if it was about Ben Kenobi or if they were actually talking about Luke's father or something. But Uncle Owen had also told Luke like it was kind of like in Harry Potter when, well, Star Wars came first, so really Harry Potter is like Star Wars, but like when Uncle Dursley tells the Dursleys tell Harry that his parents died in a car crash. There was something similar that occurred, that Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru like told Luke that his father had died in some like very mundane type of accident or something, and they did not disclose to Luke that his father was a Jedi Knight that fought in the Clone Wars. Luke doesn't learn that until he goes and actually sees Ben Kenobi with R2 and C-3PO, and Ben Kenobi at that time explains to him about his father that fought in the Clone Wars with him and was the best starfighter pilot in the galaxy. So, Luke doesn't know this about his dad or about anything. And it was because of the Larses that they like sheltered Luke from that knowledge, because they did not want Luke to like, I think Uncle Owen especially just saw like Anakin and all the Jedi as like being, he has a different belief about them. Like I think he just sees them as like leading to trouble, or like I think he was concerned about, I think my opinion is Luke's Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, like they genuinely care for Luke. Like they love him as their own son. But as a result of that, they also feel that they need to protect him against, knowing about like the Jedi or his father or anything like that, because they see that as being like a dangerous path, or just like a lifestyle that like rips you away from your family or rips you away from your obligations at home and any of this stuff. But I'm hoping that might be explored a little bit more in this show, actually, because one of the things that I think they've tried to start to explore in different Disney Star Wars things is this idea that like not everyone in the galaxy views Jedi in the same way. Like they started to explore that in the Clone Wars show, where there was some encounters where some places, some people or some species and some planets or whatever, or parts of some planets, like they look at the Jedi as being like not good. Like there are alternative views. Like not everyone views them as being heroes. Some people just associate them with war because they were so involved in the Clone Wars. Like people view it as when the Jedi come to town, that means that war is coming to town. You know, there's going to be fighting, there's going to be violence. And rather than the Jedi being the peacekeepers of the universe, like they also do engage in warfare and they play a role in that. And so people have different views about them. And then they start to explore that a little bit in this show in Kenobi in episode 3, when we meet that that alien that's from the mining planet that is voiced by Zach Braff. He very much is in full support of the Empire. Like he loves the Empire, and you know, he sees them as being good. Whereas, like, obviously, we learn as an audience in the original trilogy that like the Empire is bad, and we don't like the Empire. But like, there were some places across the galaxy where people did profit. Like people were better off under the Empire than before, so they end up being supporters. And so it's a complex world out there, and I think that's very interesting storytelling to explore that, because that's true in the real world too. Like, you know, different people benefit under different regimes, and we might view a certain regime as being evil from one point of view, but from a different point of view, you might think that the Jedi are evil, you know, you know, that, I mean,
No,
they start to,
yeah,
that, I guess that,
I like that. Yeah,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
the few episodes of the Clone Wars that I've watched, I think I happened to watch the one where they went to this planet, and the people there, they just want to be left alone. They don't want to be involved in
yeah,
war in any aspect, and then they
right.
just view Jedi as like, well, a, you know, if you are here, then war is not that far behind you, so we don't
Mm-hmm.
like that. And b, like, well,
Yeah.
you say you're peacekeepers, but you also use violence, like you use weapons and you kill people. So like,
Mm-hmm.
how can you, they just perceive the Jedi as like a sort of hypocrisy, like
Mm-hmm.
you know, you are not who you claim to be. But I
Yeah.
think the moral of that episode was actually, well, you cannot be so naive, even if you cannot decide, if you know, even if you decide to not be a part of a war, it doesn't prevent you from being involved in it. And it's only a matter of time. If you don't stand up for yourself, you know, then people is going to make decisions for you, and eventually that's a bad thing. So like, I think it's a criticism on this like pacifist thinking, which was, you know, like, I think it's called back to the World War II, right? Like that's the philosophy that a lot of countries hold. Well, we just leave him alone. Like, you know, if we just
Mm-hmm.
leave Hitler alone, we're gonna be, just let him do his business, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then eventually, well, you can be, you can like distance yourself from that kind of, you know, aggressive mentality, because he's not gonna
Mm-hmm.
leave you alone.
Yeah.
So I think that was one, that was a very sort of allegorical, like, well, yeah, it just sort of harkens to what happens in the real world, and what was the,
Mm-hmm.
some of the philosophies out there turned out to be, you know, too naive or too yeah.
Yeah.
um yeah, so I do like that. I do like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting, and I think we're starting to get to see that through the perspective of the character of Riva too, because she
Mhm.
obviously has something against the Jedi. Like, I mean, we haven't talked about this yet, but well, you and I talked about it privately a little bit, but it's pretty, we're pretty sure she's probably one of those younglings that was in the first Order 66 scene in the beginning of the first episode of
Wait, but
Kenobi.
there's a problem with that though, right? Like because she
What?
okay, so I think we okay, it's
Oh,
just
we talked about a little bit.
yeah, so
Okay.
I think the mystery out there is that how the hell would she know that Anakin Skywalker is Vader?
Yeah,
Because no,
I haven't brought that up yet, but that was one of my biggest
yeah,
complaints
and
from
then
the
we talked
second
about how
episode.
maybe she was like a really close disciple, like she maybe was like handpicked by Anakin from, from the younglings that we saw in the Jedi Temple, but then it wouldn't make sense because she obviously was like a low ranking, well, she was like looked down upon uh because of her like humble, really lowly beginnings, really
Oh,
lowly upbringings. And that would it
mm,
wouldn't make sense if she was one of the younglings and then somehow it wouldn't fit. Like if she had been a youngling and then to for her to be an inquisitor, that means that she must have been like rescued or trained even. And she wouldn't be looked down upon that way. And like she was from the slums. That implies she was just some like, you know, one of them, maybe like an orphans from some planet, and was not significant in her upbringing. And so yeah, and but if that is true, then how come she would have this knowledge of like Vader and Anakin was the same person? Because nobody is supposed to know
yeah.
besides Palpatine. So
Mhm.
I think that remains to be resolved, and I hope we get a satisfactory answer because that's one of the potential like like the red flags, not red flags, but like if they don't have a good resolution to this, it's
Yeah.
gonna make a lot of people angry, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
I did not yeah, there's so much to say there, but like I still think that she was a youngling in the Jedi Temple. She was one of the ones. This is my personal opinion, but none of this
Mhm.
is like we better figure it out by the end of this season. If they don't reveal this stuff to us, that's also going to be, I think, really a bad
Upsetting.
idea on their
Yeah.
part because some of this stuff needs to get resolved because otherwise these open up huge plot holes, and that is my biggest concern. But um, I still think she was a youngling, and this is my new kind of theory about this because I was very much bothered by the fact that she somehow knows these details that like Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. Like, yeah, I don't think she should know that information. So she obviously, and I would not think that the other Inquisitors would know that information either because here's the thing that about Darth Vader is Darth Vader hates Anakin Skywalker. Like he despises his that side of himself. Like he feels such intense pain when he thinks of Anakin that he does everything that he most possibly can to try to destroy that part of himself. And he also my knowledge of, like I said, I haven't read all the books or the comics, but from what I've heard is that basically Darth Vader tries to destroy anyone who knows that he is Anakin other than Palpatine. And I think Tarkin in some of the books or comics or something, it is revealed that or maybe Tarkin somehow knows that he is also that Darth Vader is Anakin, but I think Tarkin basically like keeps that to himself because um he doesn't he knows that like Darth Vader doesn't want people to recognize him as Anakin anymore. He doesn't want like and then Ahsoka also knows, but
Hmm.
Ahsoka is like kind of out of the picture for large periods of time, so she's probably off doing something right now. I don't know. But anyways, there's very few people that know that Darth Vader is Anakin. Darth Vader hates Anakin and tries to destroy any memory of him or tries to get rid anyone who knows that he is Anakin or knows about Anakin, like he tries to kill them because he doesn't want, he's just trying to destroy his past in a sense. Like there's so much pain there's so much guilt there, and he just hates himself. And that's part of what makes him so evil, is that he hates him. There's so much hatred and fear there that he just, I don't know, he just tries to destroy because he doesn't, I can't fully explain it, but I do understand that on some level, because like I've actually like known some people in my own life that have kind of gotten like that as they've gotten older. They almost like hate their past selves because certain like trauma or something happened, and they either feel guilty about it, or they blame themselves, or they feel like they were pathetic in the past, and they just view them, they hate the fact that they were weak or something like that. And I think that that's part of like what goes on, when Anakin turns into Darth Vader. He's basically like, Darth Vader views Anakin as having been like weak, and he feels like that was a pathetic version of himself, and he wants to get rid of that. And so, yes, it did not make sense to me that Reva knew that information. I didn't like that. But from what I also heard is that, like, I guess in some book or something at one time, like they had it revealed, or maybe it was a comic, where Obi-Wan found out about Darth Vader like in a bar by seeing some sort of like broadcast or something. And it's like, okay, well, Reva telling him is maybe better than that. And I agree with what you said, Chi, earlier about Ewan McGregor's acting during that. I loved that part of it. Like I didn't love that Reva was delivering the news, but Ewan's reaction to it, Obi-Wan's reaction to it, was perfect. And the ending after that information was revealed, from that point forward, when it focused on Obi-Wan, like, I love the end of that episode after that. I did not love how she revealed the information, because there's just like a lot of questions there, but I'm hoping that's going to get explained. And then secondly, I did not love how she killed the Grand Inquisitor out of nowhere. That was unexpected. So it was effective in the sense that I was not expecting her to just kill the Grand Inquisitor right then. But I'm getting kind of, the reason why I didn't like that is, like, I'm pretty sure the Grand Inquisitor isn't dead, because he comes back during Rebels, and people have talked about how, like, well, what if it's not the same? Maybe it's a different Grand Inquisitor, but it's like, oh, so what are the chances that the same species becomes Grand Inquisitor like twice? It's just stupid. So I'm pretty sure it's the same character that just somehow survives getting stabbed in the stomach, but apparently that species does have two stomachs, so he probably only got stabbed through one of them, and that's going to be their explanation and all that. But it's like, what I am getting sick of regarding that is, I'm getting sick of these characters in Star Wars being killed only to not actually be killed. And the other thing that's frustrating about that is that the reason why I don't like that is because I think it takes away from some of the actual deaths that did occur in the prequels and in the original trilogy. It's like Qui-Gon also got stabbed through the stomach, and he actually dies. And yet this Grand Inquisitor gets stabbed through the stomach and doesn't die. It's like, so now that's like kind of taking away from the death of Qui-Gon in a sense, and that makes me mad. So in that regard, I'm not like, I don't love that happened. But after that, when it focuses on Ewan and it reveals Vader in the Bacta tank for the first time, like, that was all really well done, really well acted. I love the sound effects during that, when like Princess Leia's like voice is like faded out and it's like focused on Obi-Wan. Like, oh, so good.
Yeah.
Like the impact of that was so strong, and you could really like feel the fear. And I would say the same thing is true during episode 3 when Obi-Wan's in like the secret shelter and he senses that Vader arrives for the
Hmm.
first time, and like that whole sequence of Vader like walking through the town, like oh my gosh, like the fear was real. Like it was so dark and so intense, and like just I think that they did that like so perfectly. And it got to the point for me that when Obi-Wan does go out to like face Vader, like I know people have been some people have criticized that like Obi-Wan just like tried to run away from Vader instead of like actually facing him. But in my mind, I like literally think I said out loud at my TV, I was like, Obi-Wan, get out of there. Like you've not been using the Force. Like you are not
Yeah.
strong enough
He
to
should
face
he should
Vader.
really run. He
Yeah,
doesn't stand a chance at all.
I think I literally said run. Like so to me it
Yeah.
made total sense that he runs because I was like he is
Yeah.
not they show that he's barely been using the Force, so he's not strong in it anymore, and he needs to he's got to do some work before he can face Vader again, because I knew, like, I was like, Vader is going to destroy you right now if you don't go. And so that I think was actually an appropriate reaction. And it's like, yeah, he was running away from Vader, but he was also trying to lead Vader away from Princess Leia. Like, he didn't want Vader to, he was
Mm.
doing it for like a noble reason still. He was doing the best he could do with the limited amount of, like, with his honed Force powers at that time. I think he was
Mm-hmm.
doing all that he could do, and yeah, he looked pretty pathetic compared to Vader, but like um I think that that was based on what they had set up earlier in the show of how rusty Obi-Wan was with the Force. That is what I
Mm-hmm.
would expect um to happen in his first encounter with Vader. And again, I think that the emotion behind it, like the fear that Obi-Wan was feeling, the just complete like almost disbelief, that was all came across through the screen. So I think that that was
Mm-hmm.
all really really well done. Uh but I will circle back really fast, and then Chi, I can let you, you know, add on to this if you want. But my my theory about Reva right now is that she was a youngling in the Jedi Temple, that she escapes the Jedi Temple, and that then she, after she escapes, though, she's like, she ends up like on the streets of Coruscant, and like um, that's when she's like recruited by the Inquisitors or whatever, because she is Force sensitive, she is partially trained. Um, and I think they find her in the gutter, I think is the phrase that the Grand Inquisitor uses, like, we pulled you from the
Yeah.
gutter.
Got it.
So
Yep.
I think it was like, I think that the gutter thing happens like after she escapes the Jedi Temple. She had to be like in hiding. And so she might have just been like, she's just a kid. So she might have just been like barely surviving like on the streets when the Inquisitors like find and recruit her. And so that's what I think, how she joined the Inquisitors, and what they mean by pulling her from the gutter, but how she could also be placed at the Jedi Temple as a youngling. But that still doesn't answer how exactly she knows Anakin is Darth Vader. Um, but it must have been something that she witnessed or saw in the temple. I think, that's the only possible explanation, is that it must be something she witnessed or saw in the temple before she escaped. Now, I had said to you, Chi, that like if she saw Anakin in the temple, like slaughtering people, um, I don't, I find it hard to believe that she would have come into any sort of proximity or contact with Anakin and not also been killed. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't like the theory. I personally don't like the theories of people that think like Anakin like spared her on purpose in the temple. Like, I don't buy that personally based on my understanding of what was well, actually at that point he's no longer Anakin. He is
Mm-hmm.
Darth Vader. And I just don't think that I just find that hard to believe that he would have spared someone in particular, especially someone that we've never, like, we have no, there was nothing in the Clone Wars show or anything of Anakin like coming into contact with some youngling named Reva that like he would have any sort. If he were to spare anyone, it would have to be someone that he has like a personal relationship with, because he doesn't even spare the people he has personal relationships with. So that, you know, I just don't know why he would spare some total like random youngling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that that's a good explanation, but she might have seen the, I wonder if she somehow saw Obi-Wan when he comes to the temple later, if she was like hiding in the temple somewhere, although I find it hard to believe that she would have been able to hide. But if she was hiding in the temple and saw when Obi-Wan comes later and watches the like security footage back and sees everything that Anakin did, um maybe she watched that like secretly. She was like in hiding, and somehow Yoda nor Obi-Wan nor Anakin like sensed her there. But and when I say Anakin, I mean Anakin didn't sense her hiding in there earlier. But I don't know. She must have like witnessed something in the Jedi Temple that like taught her that. But then she somehow like keeps that to herself for the next 10 years or 9 years or whatever. Like, that I also find hard to believe, like, because if Vader found out that she knew or was spreading that information, or that any of the other people that she spread it to knew, he would immediately kill them. So I don't, that's where I'm having a hard time like figuring out what the possible explanation could be.
Yeah.
But that could
Yeah.
make the end reveal all the more sweet. So we'll see.
Yeah. I really wonder how they would, like, what her deal is, or it would, would turn out to be. Because it seems like every possibility that we think of, there's going to be some problems. You just can't really make a really straightforward sort of story out of it. So yeah, I'm curious of what, like,
Yeah.
how did she come to know this, not come to have this knowledge?
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think we'll see.
I think it was like really great in episode 3 when she goes to, or she appears to Vader, and I think it's like the holocron thing.
The hologram.
Um, she she appears to Vader and she starts to tell him about the Grand Inquisitor being killed, and I think she like blames it on Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
She's like, Obi-Wan killed him.
Yes. Yeah.
And Vader like basically is like so dismissive of, like, he
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
care. That was perfect, because that is the relationship between Vader and the Inquisitors. Like, Vader could care less about these Inquisitors. Like, all he cares about is that they help with the
Yeah. They do their job,
that they
right?
do their job.
Yeah. They're
And
just
that's,
pawns.
yeah, exactly. They're just pawns to him. And that was accurate. Like, when he almost like could care less about that. Like, he's just basically, then at that point, he's like, you go and do this. And if you do this, then you will be named Grand Inquisitor. And if you don't, then you're dead. Like, that
Yeah.
was
You won't.
like,
Yeah. He said you won't live to regret it.
oh, you won't live to regret it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was like, that's Vader. Well, he, but when we saw him, he has been Vader for 10 years, right? So like, he is not like a baby Vader. He's like a
No.
full on like dark. He's a full on Sith Lord. So
Yeah.
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 So
And
that's very much in line with the character. Like, that's how he should be at that point.
yeah. Now I do part of me has a theory too that like part of being a Sith is the rule of two, of that there can only be two Sith at any one time. But then also part of what being a Sith is that if you are second in command, you attempt to overthrow your master. And Vader tries to do that in the original trilogy with Luke. He tries to get Luke to join him and overthrow Palpatine with Luke, and then that way Vader and Luke can then like rule the galaxy as Sith. But I'm wondering if this show might explore the concept of that before Vader even knows about Luke, did he try to recruit other people, almost apprentices, to help him in the attempt to potentially overthrow Palpatine or not? Like, did he maybe tried? Maybe what was he maybe testing these Inquisitors to see who the strongest one might be? Because maybe he would take the strongest one and then get them to help him like attempt to overthrow Palpatine. Excuse me. So I'm wondering if they might like do something like that, like that he's testing these Inquisitors, he's giving them these challenges, he's pitting them against each other because he's trying to see like which one might be strong enough to be his second in command. Because that is part of what being a Sith is that you also like you're not satisfied in second place. Like you try to, you're selfish. Like you want all the power for yourself, so you try to overthrow the person who, and Palpatine, like he is personally responsible for so much of the daily pain that Darth Vader goes through. Like he personally saw to it that like Vader was kept in basically perpetual pain, so that he would continue to be like, I guess, submissive or whatever um, to him, and that he would stay on the dark side and stuff like that. So I think that Vader, maybe there was attempts that Vader made before he ever meets Luke to try to get rid of Sidious. I don't know. But
Yeah, maybe.
I just thought about that. Like maybe Reva plays into that somehow. Like he's pitting her against the other Inquisitors to see who will come out on top.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. I have no doubt that that's what he is doing, but I doubt that that's going to be a part of the story because I think that that seems to be too big of an arc, too bit of like a of a detour from the main plot.
mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that the Reva is not gonna is gonna die by the end of the series. I don't think we're gonna see her survive beyond the current series. I just have this feeling.
Yeah,
I have no proof, but I think she's destined to die.
I kind
Yeah,
of like, in a weird way, I kind of hope so because I think she's a little overly ambitious and like she has some of these like fatal flaws that I could see like getting the best of her at some point, or like she rubs
yeah.
the
I
other
think she would just
Inquisitors the
be like,
wrong way. So it's
yeah.
like,
I think she's just like a person that's gonna bite off more than she could chew.
yeah,
Like she would just be her ambition and would just be her own doing at the end. I think
yeah,
that's pretty classic.
yeah. I
I
mean,
just
that's what
remember how
Anakin,
how she's gonna undo herself. That is the exciting part. I think there's
yeah,
very little doubt that she's gonna do that, but how? You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, um, one thing that you said earlier that I think opens up another plot hole, but this is something that I think will be resolved by the end of the show is um like what you were saying about in this encounter with Obi-Wan and Vader, that like now the apprentice has become the master. But that obviously like that opens up a plot hole because in A New Hope, Vader says to Obi-Wan, when we last met, I was but the apprentice or something, and you were the master, and now like I'm the master and you're the, or some, he says something to that effect. I can't
Oh,
remember the
yeah,
exact
no,
quote.
no. But because I didn't see that to be, because we know that they're gonna meet again, right?
Yes.
There,
Yes.
yeah. So I think the design is that, yeah, Obi-Wan is really rusty, and so he's like, had his ass handed to him this time, but at the end of this series, they're gonna like face off each other again, and I think this time Obi-Wan is gonna have the upper hand still. I think maybe not
Yeah,
as as
I
as as
think
as
in the
as,
next,
as symmetric as the last time when he like just basically just like kill Anakin.
yeah.
It's not gonna be as extreme as that, but I think Obi-Wan is gonna take the upper hand, and then he's gonna get away. I think he's gonna get away with Leia. I think she's not gonna return um to return home that soon. I think he's gonna get away with Leia, and then yeah, and that is gonna justify this comment from Vader. The last time we met, you are the master. So that would not create a problem. And I think that's how I sort of foresee it
Yeah.
in my
As a
imagination.
I agree. As of right now, there's a plot hole, but I think that
Yeah.
that's why I agree with what you said earlier too, of like I was shocked that we saw an actual confrontation between Vader and Obi-Wan in the third episode. Like we're only halfway through. I was expecting something between them because that's what was teased before the show even started. Um but I was expecting that to be in like the last episode. I didn't think that there would be like a preliminary encounter beforehand. So this is clearly not like there's going to be some sort of final encounter.
Yeah.
And yeah, my kind of prediction is like Princess Leia is now captured by Reva. Obi-Wan's going to have to go after Princess Leia. If Reva's going to try to draw Obi-Wan to a specific place because she wants to bring him to Vader, I kind of think that basically there's going to be a confrontation between Obi-Wan. There's going to be a lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan and Reva,
Mm-hmm.
and Obi-Wan wins,
Mm-hmm.
I would think, or I hope. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's
No,
maybe it's a
I
fight
think.
where he's gonna win in the sense that like he still might not be at his highest skills yet, but it's going to be a nice way for him to like start to get back into it again because
Mhm.
he's facing someone that's not as powerful as Vader. So he can use that fight to kind of get back into it a little bit more. And then he will get Princess Leia and she will be returned safely. Obviously, she has to be to Alderaan. And then he will have to face Vader. He's going to have to go face Vader again, and I think he's going to do it of his own accord in the sense that he feels that he needs closure. Also, I think he's going to express somehow to Vader that he believes that there is still good in him, that Anakin can still be brought out of him, that he can still there's still hope for him. He's going to express that to Vader because that will then explain in A New Hope when Vader says, or not in A New Hope, in Return of the Jedi, I think, when Vader says to Luke that Obi-Wan once thought the way you did, like that will explain that. But then also Obi-Wan will, by this point, he will have communed with Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon will have helped him like restore his power back to
Mhm.
full. He's get. I wonder. I actually wonder if he might end up going to Dagobah and seeing Yoda again, because in the Revenge of the Sith, Yoda actually says, "I will teach you." to commune or commune with your
Hmm.
master. I will train you or something. And
Yeah.
but we haven't seen Obi-Wan get any training from Yoda. So I wonder if Obi-Wan in some of this process he's going to end up
Yeah.
getting the
I
training from Yoda, learning how to commune with Qui-Gon, learning how to become a Force ghost, and then restore his Force powers. And maybe there'll be a bit of a time lapse. Then he's going to go face Vader again with his full power restored, and he's going to express that he has hope for Vader, that he wants him to come back to the light side of the Force. Vader is not going to do that. Obviously, they're going to fight. Obi-Wan's going to come out victorious, but not having killed Vader, maybe because he still expresses to him like that there's hope for you. And that might come from Qui-Gon communing with Qui-Gon, because Qui-Gon might tell him no, like he's still the chosen one or something like that. And I don't know, something like that is gonna go down
Yeah.
because
My prediction is actually he's gonna face Riva and defeats her, and then he's gonna learn that, oh, Vader had the girl now. Like,
what
the
girl?
girl
What are you talking about?
Leia is not with me.
With who? With
With
Reva?
Riva. With
Oh,
Riva.
she's with Vader?
Yes, I think
No
so.
way.
I think so. I think so.
That
I think
would
so.
be
I
wild.
think so. Yeah, I actually think, because that would also make sense that, why wouldn't, okay, if Obi-Wan is gonna face Vader without Leia, then it's hard to imagine why the whole fight wouldn't end with one of them dead. Why would Obi-Wan well, maybe he has to return Luke. I don't know. I just
Well,
thought
because
maybe Obi-Wan, but that, just my theory. It could be totally wrong. I don't know. But in my imagination is like, Riva is gonna kidnap Leia, right? So now it means Obi-Wan has to go to find Riva to save Leia. And he would do that only to find that the Riva has like delivered the girl to Vader, because that means that would guarantee Obi-Wan will come to you, my lord. Okay, so he's gonna do that, and I think he's gonna, because so far he was unable to communicate with Qui-Gon, because I think he's rusty with the Force. So he's been talking to Qui-Gon, but not getting any answers, and so he's gonna get some answer. He has to like muster, get in tune with the Force again,
mhm.
communicate to communicate with Qui-Gon, and that's gonna be successful. And then he's gonna go to face Vader, to bring Leia back, and they're gonna have a fight. But then, because the priority there is to bring Leia back home, so maybe the fight would be, like, Obi-Wan would win, but it was very close. So he didn't like defeat Vader per se, but he was like got the upper hand. He got away, and also in the process realized that there's no hope for Vader at all to return to the light. So I think
Yeah, we
that's how I
talked
would
to yeah.
predict the yeah. So I think that's how, and maybe Leia was like, passed out or something, so there was no risk of her knowing that was actually, um so any exchange that might give her any idea of, oh, my dad is Anakin Skywalker, and this guy I used to be like, she would not be aware of any of that. um but I think I would predict that she is going to end up with Vader at the end, and Obi-Wan has to go save her. But I don't know. We'll
My
just have to
only
see.
issue with that, I almost like that would be wild, but I almost think that that could be true
It could work because, like,
because
no one.
Princess Leia in A New Hope, like most people, and well, obviously Princess Leia, she knows of Vader, but she almost acts like when she is captured at the beginning of the movie, like she almost acts like she has met him before or something. Like she's not that afraid of him. Like she's kind of like she's like only you could be so bold. Like she's saying all this these sassy things to him. Like he really doesn't scare her that much. And so it's almost like I could see how that would fit in where like maybe she had previous encounters with him or something. But where that doesn't, where I don't like that idea though, Chi, is if Vader is to learn that Princess Leia will draw Obi-Wan out, then what prevents Vader from just continually going after Princess Leia for the next 10 years before A New Hope?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
understand how. That's
yeah.
why I'm a little worried about
No, I
them
know,
using
but that
her that
doesn't.
much.
But that's gonna be the case already. It doesn't matter who she ends up with, because as of now, Vader knows already that the girl means something to Obi-Wan. So the moment they decide to put Leia in the story, what you just said is already a problem. It doesn't really matter whether Obi-Wan saves her from Riva and return her home right then, or she's gonna somehow end up with Vader and Obi-Wan had to save her from Vader. Either way, it doesn't
Except
change the fact that
I don't know if Vader actually knows like what. I don't think that Vader is aware that the thing that drew Obi-Wan out is Princess Leia yet in this show, because he
oh,
barely
he
talks to
doesn't.
Riva. No, he just
Oh,
knows
okay,
that
okay, okay.
Riva wants to take the credit for it all. So she's just saying, I found Obi-Wan. She doesn't say how. And Vader barely gives these Inquisitors a time of day. So she's not like able to, she barely is able to tell him that like Obi-Wan killed the Grand
Oh,
Inquisitor.
I
Like,
I just thought right, yes. It
see what I'm
wasn't.
saying?
I know, I know. Yeah, I do. We haven't seen a scene where Riva explained to Vader, "Oh yeah, I found this way of getting to Obi-Wan through the girl." We haven't seen that scene yet, but it's just hard for me to imagine that she would. It makes sense that she would keep this information from other Inquisitors, but I find it hard to believe that she would keep this from Vader himself. I feel
No,
like it's going to be the first thing.
I don't think she's explained it to him, because I don't think she's she A hasn't been given the time of day in order to describe how she did it. But B, I think she being a dark sider, like, and being as kind of ambitious as she is, like, she doesn't,
Mm,
she
okay.
wants to just say like, I found Obi-Wan, like, I
Mhm.
this is where he is. She just tells Vader where he is at. And or she I don't think she's really had the chance to explain that. And I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, but I haven't, all we've seen between them is that quick little um uh what do you call those things? Why am I
Yeah, I
blanking
know,
on
like the hologram.
hologram? Yeah, the
Yeah,
hologram. That's all that he that we've seen of their interaction. I don't think she's had much interaction with him before then, because I don't think he talks to the Inquisitors that much. I think if anything, he talks to the Grand Inquisitor, and the only reason why she was talking to him was because the Grand Inquisitor was dead. And that's why
mhm,
the fifth brother also contacted Vader, because they're kind of in disarray at the moment because the Grand Inquisitor is dead or being healed or whatever it is that he's
right.
doing at the moment. And so um, I just, I don't know if he knows about Leia, and I don't think that he should. I hope that they don't reveal that to, but it's a similar, this is a similar thing as what I was saying earlier about Leia, where it's like they're treading that line between, like, it's like, do we really believe that Vader isn't smart enough to figure this out by now? It's like he shouldn't have even been in that close proximity to Princess Leia in the first place. Like when they're on the mining planet, like Leia is there, Obi-Wan's there, and Vader's there. And it's just like, that's too, it's like a little too risky for that to
Mm,
be the case, because Vader's gonna, if they keep putting these characters in close proximity, like Vader's gonna put two and two together and be like, there's something more to this Princess Leia girl than just being some random senator's daughter. Like, he is gonna realize, like, there's something, what is it with this girl? And he definitely does not know that Princess Leia is his daughter
Oh yeah,
at the
sure,
beginning
sure.
of
Yeah,
the original
there's no
trilogy.
doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, no. Yeah, it's just that there has to be some way of this kidnapping not happening again and again and again in the following years. That has to be there has to way to make that to make sense to make that sensible. So which would also mean that Vader would not know how important Leia is to Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I almost like one other thought that I had that I almost think I could have gotten behind this better, as much as I have loved seeing Leia in
mhm.
this show. Um, and I think it's really cool how they pulled her in, and I love the scenes between her and Bail Organa, like the
Uh-huh.
actor that plays Bail Organa, like he's great. He was great in it.
Yeah.
Uncle Owen has been great in it. Like, I'm so happy that he's gotten recast as Uncle Owen. Like, oh gosh, so good. But so I just want to throw those out there. But I almost could have gotten behind it better if they had set it up where, like, obviously at the beginning, the Inquisitors were on Tatooine. And I almost think it would have been better if somehow the Inquisitors got on the scent of Luke, like starting to realize that, like, maybe this kid on this farm is force sensitive, and the reason why Obi-Wan has to leave is actually to divert the
Oh yeah,
Inquisitors away from Luke.
right.
Like, I think that would have been better in
Yeah,
a
like a
sense
better.
than him having to
Mhm.
go for Leia. Like, I would have understood that more, because it's like he's, or they could have done both, right? It could have been Princess Leia's in danger, plus the Inquisitors are on Luke's scent, which maybe that would have been too much. So maybe I take that back. But it would
Yeah,
have
I
been like
know. Like
almost better if it was both, where it was like Obi-Wan believed that when he left Tatooine, he was actually saving Luke in that process. Like, that's the only thing that in my mind fully justifies him leaving Tatooine,
yeah,
is that
yeah,
he's
yeah.
actually
Right.
protecting Luke by leaving. And if they had put him in this like catch 22 where, like, he doesn't want to leave but he has to in order to protect the thing that he swore to protect, like, then how that conflict would have been really cool to see. I think if they had set it up properly where he was really like trapped and he was like, I have to go, like, I, the only thing that's going to save Luke is if I lead these Inquisitors off of Tatooine.
Mhm.
And yeah, and that would have, I think that that could have been really cool. But maybe there could have been still a way to do a little bit
Yeah.
of both, where Leia's brought into it for a, like,
Mm.
while he, maybe after he's left Tatooine, he hears about some, he's off Tatooine now, so he's in back in the world, and he's like learning pieces of news and things, and he hears something through the grapevine of Princess Leia, and like maybe he goes to like help her for like an episode, and that would have been cool. But anyways, and then while he's out and about, the Inquisitors are on his scent, so then it eventually gets brought to the attention of Vader, and that's how Vader is led to him. Like, I could have been
Yeah.
something
Well,
like that, but
I guess I guess I'm not so hung up on that he cannot leave Tatooine for 1 second. I understand. Yeah, he made a vow, but like I don't think because like the way they set up is like, well, Luke hasn't shown any sign of force sensitive yet, and I mean, we do see Kenobi being like really torn about. I don't want to, like I want to stay here. I don't want to find somebody else. Like he said repeatedly to Bill Organa, like find somebody else. Like, like
yeah.
why
Oh yeah.
me?
Yeah.
So I guess I was happy with how they set this up. That he was like reluctantly but agreed to leave Tatooine to save Leia. I didn't think that was sort of. Well, I didn't really feel that was out of his character, or somehow that was like valid to canon or something when the story went that way, I was fine with it actually. I Yeah.
I just think it was one of those things that, like, I do think that they did a good job of showing that Obi-Wan was reluctant to leave. That, I mean, he says to Bail, he's like, my duty is to the boy.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
like that makes sense. Um the other thing that like doesn't make sense is that obviously the Organas being like basically royalty on their planet, like they have all kinds of resources that they could have sent to go save Leia, but I
Yeah,
guess Bale
but they
felt
did,
that,
they did explain that though, right? Like Bale said, well, we can't let anybody else know about this thing. Like we can only trust this to somebody that's like, close. It has to be you. Like they
well,
said that.
he says other people don't know, like he was like, you're the only one that knows who she really is, because I
Yeah.
guess Bale was suspecting at that time that it did maybe have something to do with Princess. I don't know how he would have like known this, but I guess he realized that the circumstances were such that she was kidnapped not because she's his daughter, but because
Mm-hmm.
she's Anakin Skywalker's daughter.
Yep.
And
Yep.
but I don't know how he knew that, like why did he assume that? But anyways, it's I thought that they did a good job of showing Obi-Wan was reluctant to leave. Bail Organa does say this line of like, the boy doesn't, he says something like, the boy doesn't matter or something. And I kind of thought that was, I didn't like hearing that, but then I thought about it and I was like, well, that does make
Is
sense
that
from
really what
his
he's? Is that really what
perspective.
he's? Right, but is that really what he said? He said like the boy doesn't matter.
He says, like, he literally says, or I don't know if it's something like the boy doesn't matter,
I thought he said like the boy doesn't need you now or
or he
something.
doesn't matter right now. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Okay.
But I that was a little off-putting to me, but then I thought about it after the fact and I was like, well, from his perspective, like any parent would be like, you need to pay attention to my daughter. Like, the boy is fine. Like, who
Yeah.
cares about some
Right.
other person's child? He would be thinking like, my
Right.
child
Right. No,
matters
but
right now.
except that I don't know. That just undermines the character of Bail Organa. Like he would say that out of selfishness. I don't know. I just don't think that's. Well, I don't think he actually said the boy doesn't matter. I think he probably said something like the boy doesn't need you now, but Leia does. Something like that. And also,
He
I think.
said literally the word matter in the
Oh,
sentence
really? Oh, okay,
somehow.
okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm
okay.
pretty sure. I'm trying to look up the
All right.
quote, but I can't find it.
Well, anyway, yeah. So I guess I mean, yeah, I didn't. I get it. I get what you mean, but it wasn't. I guess I wasn't put off by the arrangement as much, I suppose.
It's one of those things that like I wonder if it could have been better if it was done in a slightly different way, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and I knew going into this show like there's no way they were just gonna have Obi-Wan be on Tatooine the whole time.
The whole
So
time. Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I do kind of hope that I mean, it would be freaking sweet if we also saw Yoda in this. Like I would be down for that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I know, but I don't think I think we're gonna see Qui-Gon. I think we're gonna see him, but Yoda, I don't know. I don't think so, honestly.
I can't find the
Because I don't think that the fact that Obi-Wan cannot communicate with Qui-Gon yet is not because he hasn't really been trained yet. I think it's just he hasn't used the Force for so long. He's so out of it that he cannot. He doesn't have that. He gotta get himself back into the Force to do that. I think he knows how to do that already. He's not like up there just yet.
Well, another thing that I thought of that I might have done this differently if I were in charge of the show, which I know I'm not. So, and I cannot possibly like ever. I know that these people that are doing these shows are like so incredibly talented. So I'm not trying to act like I would be able to do it better, but they did this thing where they decided that they needed it to be 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. But I don't
Mm,
understand why they didn't just do, and I guess part of that was because they wanted Luke and Leia to be 10 years old. So then they
mm,
could have like them be in the show, or Leia at least be in the show as like an actual character. But I wonder if like maybe they should have done it where, or it would have been cool that if they had set this like just like 2 years after Revenge of the Sith, because so many
mhm,
of these issues that people are complaining about are like potential plot holes. Um, I don't think would have been as big of a problem if they did this like 2 years or like 3 years after Revenge of the Sith, because it would have made more sense if like Obi-Wan found out about Darth Vader, that Darth Vader was still alive. If it was only like 2 years after, that would have made, part of that being a thing was that like really Obi-Wan hadn't heard that Darth Vader was a thing until 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. Are you serious? And like I know he was literally living under a rock, but you'd still think if people on Tatooine knew about the Inquisitors being around, you'd think somebody would have mentioned Darth Vader, because people knew about Darth
mm,
Vader.
mm,
And so
mm,
I don't understand that. But if it had been set 2 years after Revenge of the Sith, then that reveal of like Darth Vader still alive would have been just as impactful, but like um it would have made more sense with the timeline. And then the only thing there is like Luke and Leia would be like 2 years old at this point. So you couldn't have the whole thing with like Leia. You couldn't, I don't think you could find an actress, a 2 year old actress or 3 year old actress that could like really be, you couldn't have Leia be as much of a, this part of the story at that age, I don't think. But, so that would have been a problem. But, you, also some of the issues that have been brought up of like in the original trilogy when it's implied that Vader and Obi-Wan haven't met each other for, you know, a long, long time. And 10 years is a long time. So, and they don't really explicitly say how long it's been since they've last met, but it just would have been more if it was like 17 years, that is a lot longer than just 10 years. And then Obi-Wan wouldn't have lost all of his force abilities, which I think some people have debated if that's really realistic for his character, like that he went 10 years without like meditating or like keeping up with his skills on some level. Like, why would he do that if he's supposed to be protecting Luke? So, but if they did it like 2 years after, it's like you could kind of like understand why for maybe a year or two Obi-Wan was like really off of his game after the trauma of everything that happened, but then he wouldn't be that far off that he would have been so out of practice that he couldn't have this like rematch with Vader. um and they could have set it up where like he was immediately getting that training from Yoda on how to commune with Qui-Gon, and because that was implied at the end of Revenge of the Sith that Yoda was going to train him. Like I thought it was kind of implied that Yoda was going to do that like kind of as soon as possible. But they do end up on different planets at the end of Revenge of the Sith. And as far as I know, Obi-Wan doesn't know where Yoda is. So I don't know, but I just thought about that as a different potential. Like if they had told some of these stories just a little bit earlier on, if people would have,
mm.
if that would have been more of
I don't
smooth
know.
storytelling.
I honestly don't think so because I think that's the thing. It's like, it's there are a million way. Well, okay, given there's a gap between, however many years gap between episode 3 and 4, there are like a million ways you can tell a story that happened involving these characters in these time, and I just think however you're gonna do it, and then there are gonna be a million like alternatives that may be better in some ways, but inferior in other ways. So I don't know. Like I think, yeah, if they decide to have this whole thing take place 2 years after, um, you know, episode 3 ended, yeah, I mean, there's going to be a good story to tell, but it's going to be a different story, and I don't know if it's going to be like 100% superior. Yeah, and
Oh,
it's going to
well,
be
I
it's
didn't
going to be
mean
different.
to.
No, I know, I
I
know,
don't
I
mean
know,
to
I know.
say that
Yeah,
I thought that would be 100% superior by any means. I just mean I just thought that like maybe that would have been just as fine of a time to set it and just as interesting because it's in like more of the immediate aftermath.
yeah, sure,
But
sure, sure. Yeah, of
yeah,
course, right.
and then
Yeah,
it wouldn't
I
mess
mean,
up
totally
the
right, totally right.
preconceived, and then it would leave more time after after the series ends too, if they do want to continue to tell stories with Obi-Wan. Like it would leave more years before A New Hope, so that they would still have time to have Obi-Wan be like kind of isolated on Tatooine for a decade before A New Hope, which makes sense because that's what is implied at the beginning of New Hope, that Obi-Wan's just been kind of hanging out there as
Yeah,
like this crazy old man for a while. And
right.
I don't know, but um I also I don't know. There's just like a lot. It's like what you're saying. Like there's a lot of different possibilities and like directions you can go. And I know that the people behind the creators behind the show, like they probably discussed like anything and everything when they were coming up with this story. And they probably there's so many pieces to the canon and to the lore that like I don't know. And so some of the things that I say when I'm like speculating about like, well, what if they did it this way or that way? There's probably like a lot of like even bigger plot holes that would be opened up if they did it that way. So, cuz I don't really know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It's just kind of
well,
fun to speculate.
right, right, right. Yes, of course. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's going to be a story. I, I don't think like when you start, like how many years after after episode 3, uh, that you start a story. I don't think that has much to do with the plot holes, because you got to make, unless you say, okay, well, unless you decide to not tell a story at all, like nothing happened in all these years. Oh, but just stay on Tatooine, nothing happened. I mean, that would be the story that has the least amount of plot holes, because nothing happens, right?
Well, that's
But
what
if
is implied by the
right,
current
right, right, right,
the
exactly. So,
movies, and that's what
yeah,
everybody thought. And that's why
right.
when they decided to insert a story into here, there's a lot, it's like very tricky territory.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely, yes. So that my point is that unless that you say, okay, let's not temper with any of the, let's just say Obi-Wan stayed on Tatooine throughout these years, didn't leave any second, nothing happened. The only time we saw him is in this year is just the moment happened in the Rebels, where he killed Darth Maul. That's it. Okay,
I
you
thought
could,
that was on Tatooine though.
no, no, yeah, that
It
was on
Darth
Tatooine. Yeah,
Maul, he comes to Tatooine.
right, right, right. No,
So,
I know. It's that if Obi-Wan never left Tatooine at all, he stayed on Tatooine the whole time. Nothing else happened. Then that would, yeah. I mean, they could have decided to do that, and that would involve the least amount of justifications and plot holes and all that, right? But but if you decide there's something else that happened, then it really doesn't matter whether it's happened, whether they happen 2 years after, 10 years after, 15 years after. There will be a story to tell, and it would be a good story, but it would just involve different kinds of justifications and like, you know, mental gymnastics or whatever. So yeah, it just, if they had started the story 2 years after, then it would be a different Obi-Wan. It would be a different, like you said, Leia wouldn't be involved as much as a character because she would be an infant, pretty much. So they're gonna find a different story to tell, and maybe there's a story there that's gonna be, that is that the optimal in terms of plot holes involved or justification involved, but they didn't think of that. Um, I couldn't think of that. So
Well,
I, you know,
they that's what I'm saying is they probably thought about it, and then there was some legitimate reasons for why they didn't want to do it that way.
yeah,
But
who knows?
I don't know. I also thought for a while, like, I had this theory that, like, the way that Obi-Wan and Darth Vader were going to meet in this show was going to be
Mhm.
through Obi-Wan's training to become a Force ghost. Because when Yoda goes through that training in the Clone Wars show, he has to go to the planet, like the home planet of the Sith or something. And he goes through this. Sorry, that was awkward. He goes through this. He basically has to, like, face some of his worst fears and things like that, from what I
Mhm.
remember. And, like, he's confronted with, like, evil and all this stuff. And I thought that this show might do a thing where it's like Obi-Wan's learning this, he's getting this training to be able to commune with Qui-Gon and then to become a Force ghost, because he obviously knows how to become a Force ghost because he does.
Mhm.
Um, and that through that he would meet Darth Vader, and it would be like this thing that is like real but not real. It's not like an
Mhm.
actual meeting, but it is like still looks real and feels real. And I thought that was a good theory, but that is not the case. so
Yeah. Yeah.
so I don't, I have these theories and then they rarely come true. And there's probably like very legitimate reasons for why that would be a terrible idea. But I
No.
do hope.
Yeah.
What do you think? Let me ask you this. Um,
Sure.
the fact that we saw that little glimpse of Anakin when Obi-Wan, like, sees him in the desert on that mining planet, in that, like, vision or hallucination or
Mm-mm.
whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is a chance that we might get a full-blown Clone Wars flashback or Order 66 flashback with Anakin? Like seeing Anakin during Order
I I
66.
I I I don't. But I think in their final encounter, the final fight, we're gonna see Hayden's face. I think it's gonna happen.
As Darth Vader,
Yeah,
though.
as Darth
Yeah,
Vader. I think this
yeah.
is gonna happen from, maybe because we get something like that with Ahsoka when she, like, sort of damaged his helmet, and so she saw like this eye, just one eye
Mhm.
in like this
Yeah.
area. I think we're gonna have something similar where the
Mhm.
helmet's gonna get like blown off or taken off somehow, and then we're gonna see Hayden, like a young, like Hayden Christensen as Vader with his face like present.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, my
because
dog
I think
is
it's gonna be a
sneezing.
waste if you're gonna see, because if you want to have Vader wear a helmet, then why do you? It just wouldn't make sense to have Hayden back just for that, just for him to wear the helmet the whole time. I think it's gonna be a waste of his face and his he is an actor, right? Because he can convey so much more if his face is we can see his face. So I
Yeah.
think this is how we're gonna see him. I would I'll be happy if we get to see it, but I don't think we're gonna see him as Anakin um in this show.
I
I don't
wish
know. I
that
don't
they
know though.
would do that, but I know that he's also going to be in the Ahsoka series. And like, I was watching they went to, like, Ewan and Hayden were at the Star Wars celebration, and Hayden's he's growing his hair out to be like Anakin hair. Like it is very clear. So
Yeah.
and there's some of the interviews that I watched where he honestly looks like he hasn't even aged a day. But then there's other times where the lighting is different and you can definitely tell that he's older. But there's
Yeah. Yeah.
occasional moments where he's like walking or something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he looks like Anakin.
Right.
Like he
Yeah.
looks like that he could just they don't even need to de-age him. But I think that I heard that they are doing de-aging with him. But
For the Ahsoka
anyways,
show?
yeah, I think so. Something I
Okay.
heard something like that. But yeah, but I don't know if he had his hair grown out before for the Obi-Wan show, but they could have given him a wig or something if there is a flashback with Anakin. But I wish that they would do that. Like I would really like to see that more than seeing him as Anakin in the Ahsoka show, to be quite honest. But anyways, if it happens, that would be awesome. If it doesn't happen, I think you're totally right about there's going to be something where the helmet gets damaged and we see either part of Vader's face or the top part of the helmet comes off and we see like all of Vader's face minus the breathing apparatus thing. And that is part of it. Yeah. And I think it would be cool to see Vader like in his, like we saw that glimpse of him in the Bacta tank, but like to see him like more in his castle on Mustafar, or like see him in the meditation chamber or whatever, like with the helmet off. Like I feel like they are going to do some more at least scenes or moments where we're seeing Vader with the helmet off, because otherwise, why would they, as you said, like bring Hayden in to play it if it was just going to be Vader with his helmet on the whole time? But I'm glad, even if it was Vader with his helmet on the whole time, I'm still glad it's Hayden in there. To
Oh
know
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
him
Yes,
is
yes,
like cool.
absolutely.
Oh, and
Yeah.
we didn't even say it, but like in episode 3, I thought that the voice was so good. All of Vader's lines were perfect. Like the writing for Vader of the things that he was saying, and then the James Earl Jones voice for Vader was so spot on. Like it was so good. And I just think that
Wait,
they
okay, so
completely
was the
killed that.
voice done by was that a synthetic voice from James Earl Jones, or was that by Hayden? Because
Oh,
yeah, I do
James
wonder
Earl
about that.
Jones. That is James Earl Jones's voice, and he's credited in the credits. James Earl Jones is
Oh,
credited.
really?
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I
Okay,
don't
I
think
didn't know
Hayden
that.
can do that voice. No
I know.
offense to
It was
him,
like,
but
well, I know, I know. Yes, so that's what I didn't look at the credit to find out, but yeah, I wondered about that because I just thought, well, that doesn't sound like Hayden. Not just the quality of the voice, because that can be changed very easily, but just like the way like the enunciation, or the tone, or whatever. I just
yeah.
don't think it was Hayden who was saying those things. But I didn't. Oh, okay, so it was James Earl Jones. Oh,
It
cool.
was
That's very
James
cool.
Earl Jones, but here's the other thing to consider is they also in the credits was, I think it's called like Respeecher or whatever, and it's the same technology that they used for Mark Hamill's voice in the finale of Mandalorian season 2 and in
Oh,
the
yeah.
Boba Fett episodes to de-age the voice.
Right.
Slash, I don't even know if they had, I don't know. It will be so interesting if they come out with a behind the scenes thing for this show, because maybe they didn't even have James Earl Jones even show up to set. They might have just used his voice and like used the technology to make him say those lines. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what
Or
they do with Luke, with Mark Hamill and
yeah,
the
yeah,
Mandalorian. They
yeah.
just use
But
the sound bits from all his previous speeches. They just put it together and produce the
yeah,
sound. Yeah.
so they use that technology in this episode, but but that's the thing is like with with Luke and Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill was on set at least for those, and like I don't even know if James Earl Jones like ever had to show up to set for this though, because he wasn't like doing any of the acting. Obviously, he was just doing
I
I
don't
won't say
think so.
any of the acting, but I'm saying like it was literally just the voice. So they might have just been like asked him permission if they could do it, and he said yes, and then they did credit
Yeah.
him in the
Yeah,
credits, but
yeah,
they
I think so.
yeah
Or at most, I think he just went into this like a recording booth in
yeah
the
yeah
studio, and then I mean, yeah, he doesn't have to be. There's no, I don't think
yeah
he was ever on set.
yeah he
It
might have, but that's what I'm saying. I don't even know if he went into a recording booth, but
yeah,
he might have gone
he might
into a
have, yeah,
recording booth, done the lines, and then they used the technology to like make
de-aged
it
voice.
de-aged. Yeah,
hmm
yeah.
could be,
Or they
yeah.
could have completely synthetically produced the
hmm
voice using his previous like samples of Vader. And I've
Yeah,
heard, you know, it does sound like Vader from the original trilogy. Like it really
it
does
does.
sound like him.
Cause
Yeah.
like the way just the way he talk is not. You can tell that's not from the present day. Just the way
Yeah.
he talks.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought all that was great. And then
It was great. Yeah, it was really good.
my only complaint about um that whole thing with Obi-Wan and Vader is I don't understand. It does seem to be to me a little contrary to Vader's character that he turns away from the flames at the end and
Mhm,
like lets Obi-Wan go. Like
mhm.
I don't understand why he did that other than, the one possible explanation I guess is that he was hoping for a better fight, and Obi-Wan just obviously was not, he was barely fighting, so it's like Vader might have been like, well, this is boring, I'm going to wait to rematch with him again. But that, it just seems like that's a kind of a stretch because Vader like had been pining after Obi-Wan for all that time, and then he just lets him go when he could easily have, I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
hope that's
yeah.
another thing.
Yeah. My impression
Yeah.
was that maybe he wasn't letting him go. It just seems that way at the moment when the scene ended. But maybe he was, because he was being carried, Obi-Wan's being carried off somewhere. So maybe he was just actually just going to pursue him further. Like
Hmm.
he was going after him instead of, okay, watching him go and just leaving, like letting him go. Because yeah, it would be a little strange that he would just do that, right? It
Well,
doesn't make a
wait,
lot of
but
sense.
I'm confused then. What do you mean? How is, you're saying that he was genuinely felt like he couldn't overcome those flames in any way? Is that what you're saying?
No, there was no
Why
flame.
would,
There was no flame already. He put off the flames and then no, he was being carried off by by the loader robot, and then yeah, it was a little weird. But I wasn't
no, the flames,
uh,
Darth Vader ignited the flames. And oh my
right.
gosh, that whole part, like, I was freaking out when I saw that. It was like, I was not expecting that. Like,
I
I
know. Yeah, it
really,
was good.
I could not believe that they did that. Like, that was really good and unexpected that Vader was like dragging
hmm
Obi-Wan through the flames. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I thought, like, this is how they're gonna age Obi-Wan. Like, Obi-Wan gets like through being dragged through these flames. Because everybody's talking about how Ewan McGregor, how does Ewan McGregor turn into Alec Guinness
Alec
in like
Guinness in
10
10 years
years?
time, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
And I thought like maybe this is when it happens. Maybe this is all of his hair like turns gray or from somehow from these flames.
I don't know
And
about that, but
no, but another theory though, another theory is that what if somehow um they do bring Palpatine into this, which I don't think this is not really that viable of a
yeah,
theory. But what if they
right.
do, and then Palpatine and Obi-Wan meet, and Palpatine uses the Force lightning on Obi-Wan, and that's how Obi-Wan turns into Alec Guinness.
Or maybe like Obi-Wan, because at the end, by the end, like Vader knows Obi-Wan is alive. And so like Obi-Wan is like, well, I gotta change my face a little bit, so I wouldn't be, because they're gonna put out posters, right? Oh, Obi-Wan, like, something like that. So Obi-Wan's like, I gotta change my face a little bit. So he
Oh
he,
yeah,
he used
I
some
don't
he
know.
used some like forced plastic surgery, and like and then it's as skin
Yeah,
as his face now.
I don't know.
Instead
I
instead
don't.
of No, I don't think it's gonna. No, it would be hilarious if that's what happens, but I don't think it's gonna happen that way. Um, yeah, no. So sorry. I thought maybe at the end of episode 3, maybe Vader wasn't actually letting Obi-Wan go. Like he was actually just going to, like, round him off or something. Like just to, he wasn't like giving up. But I don't know. Yeah, we got to see how episode 4
Yeah,
starts
we
to,
gotta
to
see.
know what happens there. Because yeah, it would be
Hmm.
weird that, yeah, like you said, it wasn't like, unlike Rogue One, where the target of that's being pursued was like flying off into the space. So like
Yeah,
Darth Vader had to like stop there. Like it's just like a bunch of, like, I don't know, is yeah, some hills or something, like some amount of like coal or something. Vader could easily just get over there and just, take
he could
Obi-Wan.
literally go around, over, or through
Yeah,
the
all
fire,
through.
or
Exactly.
he could
Yeah.
just use the force to put the fire out again like he did the first time.
Or
And
hold off the loader robot. He
yes,
could just like,
or
oh, just
he
stop
could
there.
crush the loader robot in a
Yeah,
second and then
exactly.
drag Obi-Wan
Exactly.
back across. Like he could lift
Yeah.
Obi-Wan off the ground and over the flames if he wanted to. Like he could have done any of those things. And that's why I don't understand. And that reminds me of one more thing that I feel like I haven't heard that many people point out from like other reviews and stuff I've heard, is at the end of episode 2 when Obi-Wan is escaping on that cargo ship with Leia and Reva like
Hmm.
runs after them,
Hmm.
and the ship is like right there and she's right there and she doesn't, and she's a force user who's obviously like
Oh yeah,
pretty
yeah, yeah, yeah,
talented,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
she didn't jump on the ship. I was like, what are you doing? Like she's acting like they're already gone. And that is
Yep.
another thing that like the writers should have just written that so that it would have been really easy to fix. It should have just been that they had taken off soon enough that by the time Reva gets there, it's already like too far away to jump onto. Like I don't know why that is something that like it shouldn't have even been a problem. So that was just a little
Yeah, yeah,
annoyance,
yeah,
but like,
yeah, yeah. I think there
you
has
know
to
what
be
I'm
some
saying.
rules about. Apparently, they haven't talked about what Force can and cannot do. If you say, okay, if the rule is that a Force can only, like,
You can
it's
jump.
only strong enough. It's only strong enough to like to control the motion of an object that weighs as much as a person. Then we understand why Riva cannot just like hold off the ship, or like hurl himself her onto the ship. I don't know, like, but apparently, yeah, like you would just have this
I
problem
wasn't
of like how, yeah, like why
I don't
it's
think she could have held that whole ship back and prevented it from moving through the force. Like it's too big. But she definitely, as demonstrated by her parkour earlier in the
I know,
episode,
she could just
could have
easily just jump
easily
onto the
jumped
ship. Yeah,
on and then
yeah,
broken into it somehow. But
right.
maybe it was such that she thought that, here's a possible explanation. She might have looked at it and thought like it was too, if she jumped onto it, the
Too
doors were
risky.
too heavy. Like she wouldn't have been able to open the doors or break into it in any way because it is a
Yeah,
pretty like hefty, like the door was pretty strong. So maybe she would
right.
have felt like she couldn't have done that. And I don't know. And that's why she didn't jump on it. But like, I just thought that came off as being like kind of silly. And it's like, because we've seen that before. It would have been different if we've never seen anyone do that before, but we've
Mhm.
seen it many, many times where a Jedi has jumped onto a moving ship and gotten into the ship, or like, or somehow
Yeah.
like stowed away or just whatever. And I didn't understand it. But that was just like, it's
Yeah.
not that big of a deal, but it was just like a little thing that
I
I
know,
was like,
yeah, but it's just
why?
this, yeah, but it's just these things that makes you like, I guess, like takes you out of it. But I guess it depends on the audience member. Like, if um I can sort of suspend my disbelief and say, yeah, that if you want to be serious about this, it wouldn't make sense. Like she could easily have have found a way to still like get a hold of them. Like she wouldn't just be there like, oh, I'll get you. Like, it's she could still obviously do something about it. But
Yeah.
then again, like but but how I just like, oh, I'm gonna let that slide because it's eventually it's not like
Yeah.
we're not writing like a thesis on this thing, so whatever. Like you could have written this better. I agree. Like all you need to do is to make the ship take off a little faster, so like Riva wouldn't be like just right above her head. Like that's easy fixed. Um,
Yep.
but again, just because it's so easily fixed, it's obviously a flaw. But like, all right, whatever.
Well, and what it is it's like, I know what you're saying. Like, we're not writing a thesis on this and everything. And it is like, it is something that, like, when I saw it, I was like, well, why aren't you just jumping onto the ship? That's my first reaction, was that.
Yeah,
Because it
yeah,
was just like this little thing that was like very blatantly in your face. Like, well, what is preventing
yeah,
her right now? But like,
exactly.
but then it also, what it does is it takes away from the character of Riva as being as like menacing of a evil character, because then it's like,
Hmm.
oh well, she apparently
Well, yeah,
can't
that's true.
even jump
That's true.
5 feet onto a ship. Like, she's a force user and she's supposedly like powerful enough that she killed the Grand Inquisitor, that he didn't even sense it that she was about to do that. And yet she can't jump 5 feet onto a ship and like get on board. Like, I don't
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
understand. It like takes away from her character's abilities. It's
Mm,
like they spent the whole
right.
episode trying to show that she's obviously like proficient in her abilities, that she was able to draw out Obi-Wan Kenobi. She was able to, kill the Grand Inquisitor. She knows this important information about Vader, and yet
Yeah, I know.
then
Somehow she couldn't get herself
she's
onto the spaceship,
also incompetent
cargo
at the
ship.
same time. So that's all
Yeah,
I'm saying
I
about
guess
that.
so.
But
Yeah, yeah.
that was
Yeah.
just, I just
You
was
have a point.
reminded.
You have a point there. You have a point there. But
But I
then,
think that's just like a silly like mistake. Like, it's a little bit of a mishap, but it's like not, you can like right after it happened, I was just like, oh well, whatever. It's like,
yeah, you
yeah,
just
that's
pretend that the
annoying, but
cargo ship was actually
yeah,
much higher above her head than was portrayed in the scene.
yeah,
That would
yeah,
just fix it. We can just fix
yeah,
ourselves as an audience
yeah,
member because the idea is that yeah, she got there too late. She couldn't do anything about it, so
yeah.
she had to see them, watch them go. Got that's it.
I
Yeah.
also didn't, I really didn't like when she was doing the like parkour or whatever across the rooftops, and there's this
Hmm.
one move, like it was all fine and I was like, okay, okay, but then there was this one move where she does this, like, she's going forward but she does a backflip. And I was just like, that doesn't seem very efficient for getting you to the direction you want to go. Like, she does a backflip which
Um,
almost like took her backwards, right? Like, instead of moving, propelling
yeah.
her forwards. And I
Yeah.
didn't
But
understand that either.
I actually thought maybe obviously she is not like a rookie, but maybe she is not as proficient in force uh as her confidence
Yeah.
suggests. Because like
Yeah.
she was like easily subdued by the fifth brother or something. She was like flattened on the
Oh,
table.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
agree.
I forgot
So
about
maybe
that.
she's like she's really ambitious. She's like maybe has a really high opinion of herself, but maybe she is not that because she's like really young still. Like maybe she's not that strong or proficient in force, perhaps. Because
Mhm.
all she has done is like, well, the parkour, yeah, that's cool, but that wasn't that impressive in terms of
Mm,
the force skills, right? Like,
mhm. Yeah.
it's like a Padawan can just do that, right? Like,
Yeah.
um,
I don't know.
so yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay, well, so maybe we'll get to hear more about maybe like when the behind the scenes gets released, maybe we'll hear more about what her character setting was, like, oh, how
Yeah.
good she is with the force and how, yeah, that kind of thing. Because yeah, it does bring a lot of questions in terms of like, oh, how would this happen, but that cannot happen, and blah blah blah. But
Well,
I
and
think it's also like a force. It's just, it's like in a way it's arbitrary, right? It really, I don't think there's a book out there that says, um what what can a person do if he or she is that strong with the force versus that much strong with the force. I mean, there's no rule, I guess. So maybe that's why we have this, like, well, if she can like parkour like that, why can't she just jump onto the cargo ship, and versus, all that. Maybe that's part of the
well,
problem.
they're actually, I mean, I don't know a bunch about this, but they're actually, and I don't know if maybe they made this like non-canon or something, but I know that there are actually power levels in the Star Wars universe. Like they use them in the prequels when they were choreographing the fights between the lightsaber fights between different characters, especially I think the final Obi-Wan and Anakin battle. But
Mm,
I think that that came into being through like video games or something, or maybe it was George Lucas like initially, like that's how he would rank them from 1 to 10 to
mm,
display like how powerful they were compared to other characters and stuff. And like Anakin, like there's a difference between the dark side and the light side. Like apparently like the difference between being a level 8 and a level 9 is really like the dark side. Like you, it's very hard to become like a level 9 or 10 without, like, the dark side allows you to move up in power quicker
oh,
than the
more.
light side. Like the light side you have to progress slowly through each one, but the dark side like allows you to cheat kind of and get
Mm,
ahead. And then I think like Palpatine would be like a level 10 cuz like when you are able to use like force lightning and stuff like that. But I could be wrong about that, but I literally just watched a clip, like a behind the scenes clip earlier today that I've already seen like many times in the past, but I rewatched it today. And it
mm,
was Nick Gillard, the guy who did choreographed all the lightsaber battles and
mm,
stuff in the prequels. He said like that Anakin, when he turns to the dark side, he goes to a level 9, and Obi-Wan stays at a level 8. Anakin and Obi-Wan are both at level 8 at the during Revenge of the Sith until Anakin becomes Darth Vader. He then jumps to a level 9. So actually when they're having that final battle, Anakin is more powerful than Obi-Wan at that point. But
mhm,
his ambition, his over aggression and his ambition gets the best of him, and that's how Obi-Wan's able to defeat him.
mhm,
Not because Obi-Wan's more powerful, but just because Anakin gets overly, he thinks he can make that jump and then he doesn't, obviously. And um
right.
so anyways, it's just like it was just listening to that earlier today. So there are these power levels. I don't know if how in detail those go, of like if they say, if there's any source that says like a level 2 means this, a level 6 means this, like you can do this ability, you can do that ability. But this is one of my critiques of the Clone Wars show, because in the Clone Wars show I feel like they have Ahsoka doing some like crazy impressive things with the Force, which in the Clone Wars show they just act like that's just normal. But we've never seen that, like the level of things that Ahsoka is able to lift, move, jump, balance on, like fight. Even she fights some pretty impressive enemies, and like and she's still a Padawan, and it's like what, like in the prequels, like there's they struggle to move like objects of a certain size through the Force. But in the Clone Wars, in the animated series, they're able to do that. They're able to animate that a lot more easily. And so they have these characters doing some like crazy things with the Force that like I don't feel like we see the equivalent of that in the movies as much. And in some ways that, in my mind, like even though it's really cool to see in the animated show, it also kind of, I mean, sadly, in my mind, like kind of takes away from the impressiveness of some of what we get to see in like the original trilogy and the prequels. But it doesn't really. So I don't mean to like get my panties in a bunch over that. I just, that it is an interesting thing to discuss, like, you know, those different, like what, you know, how, I don't know if there are hard and fast rules is what I'm trying to say, of like what can be done through the Force, like what objects are too big versus what object, like how much can be moved, or how far can one jump, or how fast can one like run using the Force, or even like with people like Mace Windu, like some people, like you can use the Force to like cushion your fall. And so some people wonder if maybe when Mace fell out that window, did he cushion his fall with the Force? Is he still alive? You know, like maybe. So, but who knows what's possible? It was like implied that he died, but there's some crazy things that have been done through the Force, and the rules definitely don't seem to be hard and fast. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
I will throw out two other little short theories, and then maybe we can make a quick Stranger Things commentary and then sign off, since we've been talking for a while. But this is what happens when I talk about Star Wars.
Star Wars, yeah.
But one theory was that I heard about was that there might, if that loader droid actually has like a human or a different something inside of it, it's not actually a droid. It could be a clone in there, or even Quinlan Voss, who was mentioned in the episode. I've heard those two theories, so I just wanted to mention that. I think that those are interesting theories, because there was something about that droid that seemed to be a bit not droid-like. And I know that, like, you know, thinking about it like from a outside out of universe perspective, like obviously there was a person in the droid suit, like acting as the droid. So that's a thing in Star Wars. Like, yes, the droids have people inside of them sometimes acting the droid part. But within the universe, it's like maybe there is a clone in there disguised as a droid, or Quinlan Voss described as a droid, which would be cool. And I also really liked the Quinlan Voss like name drop that was in that episode. That's kind of exciting, because I think we'll get to see that character at some point, and that would be cool. And then other theory that I don't know if I really like this one, but apparently it does have a bit of a history, like precedent to it. That obviously Obi-Wan mentions the fact that he seems to remember that he has a brother. And I was going to say this earlier, but didn't do it. Some people are theorizing that Uncle Owen is actually Obi-Wan's long-lost brother. And that comes from the original novelization of, I don't know if it was A New Hope. I think it was A New Hope. And it got changed or something at some point, but it does have this like long history that dates to the original trilogy of, there was some novelization of A New Hope or related to A New Hope that somebody wrote that Uncle Owen was actually Obi-Wan's brother. And then I think it got changed or rejected. It definitely wasn't part of canon anymore or something. And now people are wondering if Disney is about to make that canon. I don't know if I really like that though, because I just
Yeah.
think that it's too convenient that these characters are tied together in all of those ways. Like
Yeah,
I don't
and
like
what
it.
I don't, yeah, my I guess my problem with that is that what does that, what would that do? Like, what benefit would that have in terms of, it's just that, oh, it's connected, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
everything
I
has to
guess
be
if
in this kind of way.
if Obi-Wan and Uncle Owen figure that out about each other, you know, that is potentially an interesting thing for them to know about each other. And that would give even more kind of weight to what Uncle Owen is doing by, you know, Obi-Wan brings him Luke and he agrees to raise this boy that isn't his own blood, really. And on basically Obi-Wan's request. So it's like then if they figured out that they were brothers, like that would add even more to it that he's like, I don't know, doing this also for his actual brother because obviously their
I don't.
relationship is tense at the moment, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think it's gonna add anything to it. I think it's gonna
I
make it
think
worse,
I think some
to
of
be honest.
the issue with it when they originally when whoever it was like originally came up with that idea was like why would Owen then have a different last name? Why wouldn't he be Owen Kenobi? Like where does Obi-Wan Kenobi get his last name and like all this stuff? But I don't know. There's a
No,
lot of questions.
no, I think that's easily fixed. I think the problem is that, well, okay, so what do you hope to add to the whole thing by making this arrangement? If, especially now that it seems like it's a retrospective fix. It's like now you want to make it seem, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that
Yeah, I don't
theory.
really like it either.
Yeah, I don't like it.
But I do think it's cool that it has like a long history. It's not like some random thing that somebody just came up with. It was like actually somebody had
Yeah,
written
yeah, yeah.
something
No,
about that like way back in
right.
the 70s or 80s and um
I mean,
so that's cool.
maybe when Lucas was still like trying to figure out the whole story, like when this trial like is still in the world building stage, maybe maybe it was considered once that maybe Owen would turn out to be Obi-Wan's brother. But if that had been, if they had decided on this and then develop a story based on this premise, that would be fine. But now that we know that there is no evidence suggesting that they were brothers, and there's nothing in in the whole story that needs this connection really, then if people put that in, then what would that do? They just wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, I
It would just
don't.
like, oh,
Yeah,
oh yeah, it would just like this retrospective, like, oh, like I said, there's this other secret, uh, this secret connection. It's just being there for the case of being, oh, to being a secret. It has nothing, no function in terms of the plot or the character development, nothing whatsoever. So I don't
yeah,
like it. It's just a gimmick, to be honest. If
yeah.
yeah.
I just don't think I like any more characters that are like tied to Tatooine in that way. Like
Mm, mm,
Tatooine is really supposed to be this like planet that is like the farthest thing away from all of the action, and yet it gets like all of every show
yeah,
set on Tatooine and like all this.
yeah.
But
Because Luke was there,
yeah, but like that's the whole
before.
thing. It was supposed to be this like backwater planet
Mhm.
that like nothing ever happens there, and Luke is like bored to death and like just wants
Yeah.
to get out and adventure and like I don't know. And
Yeah.
so it's like Obi-Wan is now also potentially had roots on Tatooine. Like what? And the only other thing that like maybe is kind of cool about that, but I don't think again, I don't think is necessary is if Owen was um uh Kenobi's brother, then that means that Owen's father and Obi-Wan's father, who ended up being with Shmi Skywalker at the end of his life or at the end of their lives, um, then that actually does make Obi-Wan like more like basically it makes Obi-Wan Anakin's real life half brother. And so that like provides maybe a little bit more weight to the "you are my brother Anakin" line. But again, I don't think it's necessary.
No.
They like they're still not blood related at all. So
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
like
yeah.
and I
You
don't
know,
want them to be. They're not
no,
supposed to be.
no,
So
I think it's the fun thing is if they turn out to be like blood brothers, I think it's gonna take away it's actually gonna take away the weight when Obi-Wan said, "You were my brother." Because I think that the whole significance of that is that they are not actually brothers. They are not related by blood, but despite that, they
that's
became
how
close like
strong their
brothers.
bond was.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
if it turns out that they are actually related, then no, it's gonna undermine the whole significance of their connection. Actually, it would not enhance it. It would actually undermine it, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah,
Yeah. I don't like it either. So I
I mean
am
there are all kinds of
actually
theories out
hoping
there. Yeah, no,
I'm
I don't.
hoping that they weren't that's not what they were hinting at by having
No,
Obi-Wan
no.
say that.
I don't think we need to worry about that at all. I think they know better. You know,
Well, I don't know because they might see it as like, oh, we're paying homage to this idea that was way from back way at the beginning, and they're tying it back to that. But I hope
yeah.
I don't
I
think
hope
so.
not.
I hope
I
not.
really hope not. I really hope
Yeah,
not. You
yeah.
know, it's. I think they should have learned a lesson when when you know like the Ray like it's a Ray Palpatine. You remember that
Hmm.
twist? That shitty twist.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, no,
I think they
yeah,
should have done a lesson already. Like you just don't make this this like connection like after the fact. It just doesn't. It would never work. If it's not the plan from the beginning, just don't make it. Don't make that change. It would never work. It would just seem contrived, if anything. So I trust them because the people that are handling the Star Wars material right now. I think they are like very in sync with George Lucas's um, you know invention and ideas. So I think I trust that they would know better than this. I do.
I hope so.
I
I
hope
hope
so.
so.
Yeah, but there's hoping, but I do hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we should actually save Stranger Things discussion for the next time.
Yes. Well, that
Yeah,
is
because
fine because
it's approaching 3 hours of streaming,
yeah, we should
and
call it quits.
yeah, I think we have a lot of content for this week. So the so the audience.
Well, it is like I don't know. It's kind of I feel like a lot has happened in those first 3 episodes, so it felt like a
Yeah,
lot
no,
of ground to
there's a lot
cover.
to talk about. I think we cover a lot of grounds, and it's good discussion. I feel like if we gonna start another topic, which is Stranger Things, which is has just a lot to talk about just in
Yeah.
itself.
I'll just
It's gonna.
say I'll leave it at this. I'll just say
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the
Me too.
7 episodes that I have seen of this season of Stranger Things. And yeah, they just did really well with it. So I'm very satisfied and I cannot wait to see the rest of the episodes that are supposed to be released on July 1st
July 1st. Oh
in
wow.
the US.
See,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought, okay, well that's good. That's actually good. Yeah, good
Yeah,
news. Good.
well, and episode 7 is like an hour and 40 minutes long.
Really?
It's like ridiculously long.
What?
I can't even remember.
Wow.
Episode 5 might have also been pretty long. Like they gave us like a lot. And this is like what I'm so excited about with this is like I hope that other shows like, maybe some of these Star Wars creators will like take note of this because it like it is
Give
possible.
us more.
Well,
Yeah.
it's possible to make a great season of
Hmm.
streaming television that is high quality storytelling that also involves like a decent amount of visual effects and do it like
Yeah.
effectively and I don't know what their budget was like, but like within budget and like it will keep fans engaged and it's just really high quality storytelling and it adds something to the story that I don't know. It's just like it's possible to do this and then you can do something like that where you drop like a final episode that's like an hour and 40 minutes long. Like how I was just like so swept away when I opened up that last episode and I saw that. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like a
You're
movie
like,
right now."
yay, more content. Yeah.
That's what I like thought with Boba Fett. I was like hoping that that last episode was going to be like a lot. And
Mm.
it was fine. It was a great episode, but it was like not as long as I thought that it could have been. But then they did do a lot of visual effects with that Rancor and stuff. So I understand like why they had to budget it. But like I don't
Yeah.
know. I think Stranger Things proves that you can do that sort of stuff and keep it like within I imagine they had to keep it within a certain budget and still make money on it like when you release it. Like it's
Hmm.
possible to do that. And I know Star Wars probably has a different level of expectation of what they expect from their special effects and their visual effects and all that. But like still, I think it comes to TV, it's not always about like making it like movie quality when it comes to visual effects, but it's about telling a great story over the course of all the episodes.
Hmm.
And then you can have visual effects within there, but the most important thing is that story because that's what keeps everybody gripped from episode to episode. And yeah, so that's all I'll say. I'm done. Sorry. I didn't mean to even say that much.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, I agree 100%. I don't think the streaming is it is a good way to tell like a fully sort of fleshed out stories. Yeah,
Yeah. And where you can have
I
like
don't
a
know if
lot
Star
of
Wars will follow
characters.
suit and make every episode like an hour and 20 minutes, but still, I mean, yeah, as long as the story is like the pacing is tight, the content is good, no complaint for me. It can be 45 minutes, it could be have an hour, it could be an hour and 30 minutes. It doesn't matter. Like I've seen shows with all these lengths and they're all great. Like Barry,
Mhm.
the show I've been watching, one episode is like a half an hour. Still, like that's great. That's still very good. You
Well,
know.
I think
So,
it's cool in a sense that like these creators of these shows are no longer like restricted of having to plan it around commercial breaks and like be exactly this length
yeah,
every week.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
now you do get shows on streaming that it's like one episode is 30 minutes, the next episode is 45, the next episode is an
Hmm.
hour and 7 minutes, the next episode is 35. Like they can make it as long as they need to make it in order to tell the story that they're trying to
Yeah.
tell, and that's cool. Having said that, sometimes the most impressive creative feats happen when there are strong limits that are put on something, and so sometimes limits aren't always a bad thing. But
Hmm.
I still think it's kind of cool that stories are being able to be told like with their own pacing rather than having to be planned around commercial breaks and all that. It does open up a huge variety of really intense and in-depth storytelling that I don't think we saw on television before streaming
Hmm.
existed.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. Yeah.
Yep. Okay,
Okay.
well, we'll save more discussion on that for next time. And I promise that we don't always go this long, but we have sometimes had 3-hour conversations before.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's not. It doesn't happen every time, but it also doesn't happen that rarely. I mean, like we just said, as long as the content is good, which I think we talked about, there are good discussions. Then, yeah, if it takes 3 hours, it takes 3 hours.
well, I don't know if anyone possibly would ever listen to this whole entire
You
thing.
never,
But if
you
you
never
did
know.
listen, thank you very much for listening all the way to the end. And like I said at the beginning, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave us a comment, any feedback. And yeah, we're looking forward to putting more stuff out there very soon, next week, I think. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Remember to tune in if you find this interesting. We look forward to to more participants and more audience.
yeah. And maybe one of these days we'll even figure out how to do like pull up a if we get a little bit of an audience going, we could pull up a bit of a live chat or something and answer some questions or
Yeah.
engage with you
Oh, we
all
can do it.
during.
We can do it here, actually.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think so. I think there's a way
Yeah,
to do that. Yeah.
I know that there is through StreamYard, but I don't know if I'm seeing what you're seeing, Chi, because I think since you started this, you get to be able to be the one that would be able to pull up the chat and stuff like that. So we're figuring it out as we go. And apologies to any listeners for maybe a few of these first episodes being a little rocky as Chi and I are trying to figure things out with how this all works since we've never
Yeah.
done this before.
Although I think this episode is actually pretty smooth. I
I
didn't.
thought we did good.
Well,
I
flow
hope.
wise, I mean, we might get some complaints about. Okay, let me be
Rambling
clear.
on for
I
far too
I
long.
I don't I don't care. I'm not like I'm fine. But we might get some opinions about, well, can you just make your episodes shorter? But uh but flow wise, I don't think it's rocky, actually. I think we've gotten over when we first started recording. I think we might have been pretty rocky back then, just like because I think we were both like self-conscious about we are being recorded, but I think we've both gotten over that.
Yeah, I think
uh
we're
yeah,
doing
like,
fine. But
we
I just
were.
mean
Yeah,
we don't have any I know we don't have any fancy like intro or outro or anything, and
yeah,
we're kind of just like
just chatting.
doing this a little, yeah, casually. And I think, hopefully that's fine
I
for
think it's
our audience as we get going here and
all.
all that.
Yeah.
So
Also, I think at the beginning we didn't think we're gonna show our faces so soon. At least I wasn't. I just thought, okay, we're gonna, all they're gonna when they tune in, they're gonna hear our voices, but they wouldn't see what we look like. And not that I was against it, but I just thought, okay, well, it's not that important. But with
I
it
know.
with this live stream thing, we, I think it would be silly if we somehow like don't show our faces or like wear a mask or something. That would be silly. But
You
yeah,
can do
because
it where you can turn off your camera and you can have a little logo for yourself or something. But I
what do you
just
mean, like
think if
cover my faces?
no, like it's like if I stop my camera, it just shows this, but you can change this image to
Oh, I
be
see. I see. I
your
see. I
own
see.
like personal little picture or logo or something. And um I've seen that before on live streams, like people that don't want to show their face, they can just put that up instead.
Well,
And
I think it's too late now because this one
yeah,
is going out already. So
yeah. Well, and
that's
I think if this is our primary content, it's like, I
yeah,
mean,
it's
I
fine.
don't look
It's
that
just that we
great
might
tonight,
get some
but
comments. Yeah, it's just inevitably we're gonna get some comments about our appearances, probably. I hope like okay. I hope our audiences, they're all like respectful and polite. But who knows?
Well, well, obviously, we don't condone like super inappropriate comments and stuff like that. So, excuse me. If we get any of that, we will probably have to monitor those. And if there's anything
Yep.
really bad that's posted, we'll just delete it. But
Yeah.
I honestly think Chi, like, I won't be surprised if for these first couple ones that we put out that we don't get much of an audience for them. We're
Hmm.
gonna have to build more content before I think people might start noticing or being able to tune in or something. So yeah, and I hope that we can maybe over the next couple months be putting out some shorter clips too of cutting these up a little bit, little segments of them so that people can maybe discover us that way if some people aren't going to want to listen for 3 hours. So, and I definitely think like I foresee us in future episodes, like some of them might just be like 1 hour or 1.5 hours, and
Hmm.
they're not always going to be this long. But I think when we're feeling good, when the conversation's good, when there's plenty of stuff to talk about, and energy is good, like sometimes we do
Yeah.
go for longer, and I don't have a problem with that. But I know I can't do it every weekend because this is getting late it's late
Hmm.
for me. It's
Yeah. Very very late.
earlier in the day for Chi. Um, but yeah, that we didn't say that at the beginning, but that's why we called it 11 hours apart because we are approximately 11 hours apart in time
Well,
zones.
yeah. We'll
But it's
explain this.
actually
We'll
not
explain
11.
this running gag later. But yeah, let me just put. I was just spoiler alert. Not actually 11 hours apart. We're actually never 11 hours apart. But we'll explain why that is
We
later.
apparently can't do math, even
I
though
We
we
can't do
both
math. Yeah, we can't do geography.
were
Obviously.
scientists.
Yeah, exactly. I got a PhD. Oh, shame on me. Um, it's
That's
just
okay.
no. It's pretty funny actually.
Yeah.
Um,
All right.
cool.
Shall we bring this to a close?
Yep.
Whew.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been fun. Thank you, Leah, for sharing your thoughts. And well, nobody tuned in this time, but it's going to be up there on the channel available. So, if you somehow came upon us on a later time, and you're always welcome to check back to these early episodes. Um, so I guess we'll see you hopefully next week when we talk about you know Top Gun Maverick, which is going to be exciting, and also Stranger Things season 4, which we didn't have time to talk about today, this time.
Yeah.
But so
And
yeah, so check back for these things if you're interested. And any other things, Leah? You want
Chi,
to
do you
say?
think you'll be able to finish through episode 7 of Stranger Things by
I
next
think
week?
I think so. I
Okay,
think so.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely I think that that would be good because then I'll watch Top Gun Maverick and we can probably do both of those in one because I have some things I'd like to share about Stranger Things, but you know I don't need to go into as much detail as we just went in for Kenobi for Stranger Things. So I think
Yeah.
we can have that conversation
Yeah. No,
shorter.
it's better. It's better to wait until I have watched all the episodes, so I know I can sort of fully participate in the conversation. Also, one last thing: do you think you get to watch everything everywhere all at once? Still,
Yeah, so I was almost gonna go. I still would like to try to get to that. Although right now Top Gun is my priority. The thing
sure,
is,
sure, yeah,
not
no problem.
everywhere is showing it anymore because it's
Hmm.
slowly trickling out of theaters. So I'm gonna try to, but I don't want to promise it. So
Sure, okay,
I'm gonna try to do it like soon though, because like I said, it's slowly like leaving theaters. So I if I don't get it soon, then I'm gonna have to wait till it comes out like on streaming
For
somewhere.
rental or something. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. I'm
Yeah.
just curious.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That sounds
I
good.
will try to do that. That's another one that has been on our radar that she saw a while ago and I
Yeah.
didn't see yet because I
Yeah.
failed to do so.
Leah was sick.
Well,
Unfortunately.
yeah. And I was transitioning into a new job and all
Oh,
this.
that too. That too. Yeah, that too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, thanks also, Chi, to you for sharing your thoughts today. This was great. I had a lot of fun. So,
Yay.
yeah. And thanks to our future listeners, hopefully. Yeah, we can't wait to continue with this. So,
Yep.
alrighty.
All right. Signing off.
So long.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so I just ended the broadcast. So I'll figure out.
Mine says it's still live.
Oh, there's probably a time lag or something.